that's really bad.
Yeah, but it was not a problem. So hopefully, let's see what's happening. Hello. Is it going live?
Oh, so there's people.
Yeah, people are here. So can they hear us? That's the first question. Let's just refresh this page. I think they can hear us. I can hear myself, so that's fine. All right, cool. That is very good.
They're saying Illuminati or something.
Illuminati. Illuminati is never too far away from ex-Muslims.
It's true.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in today. I'm Veedu Vidz, and we are here with our special guest, Imtiaz Shams. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. So we've got a very interesting live stream for you today. But just to give a brief background for people who may not be familiar with Imtiaz's work, Imtiaz is an ex-Muslim. He's someone who advocates for freedom of conscience and freedom of thought. And you've been very much involved within the ex-Muslim scene in the beginning, and now more general within people who leave religion and need a safe place, some sort of maybe the tools to rebuild their life, or just to sort of get on with their life. And you set up the Faith to Faithless organization, which is great work, and this is where you sort of get involved with people who leave their religion and need some support. You've also been quite influential and a leading figure for the ex-Muslims, specifically within the UK, but in general the West as well. As your sort of profile is growing, I came across your channel Piecemeal, which please check it out if you haven't. I'll put a link to that in the description, where you're talking about people living Islam, different issues within Islam, like homosexuality as well, and how to start your life again if you leave Islam, because obviously it's a very big task in itself. So you've done a ton of work over the last few years. Could you give us a brief intro, or sort of an in-depth intro, however you want to take it, as to your background, how you sort of had doubts, and then how that led you to leave Islam, and how you got to where you are now?
Just to start off with, first of all, I love that you can say my name properly, because you say like Imtiaz.
Imtiaz, yes, that's the Pakistani within me. Yeah. A lot of people say normally Imtiaz.
Imtiaz.
Yeah,
they call me Imi or something.
Imi. Okay. Well, it's Imtiaz.
Imtiaz.
Yeah. There we go.
It's like, it really bothers me when people say Pakistan. I say Pakistan.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyways, So I grew up, like a lot of Muslims, you're born into it, right?
Yep.
But then again, like a lot of Muslims, you have to re-engage with it as you grow older.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with me. I'm British. I was born in the UK, but I grew up partly in Saudi Arabia. So I spent 10 years there, and then I came here and moved to East London.
Yeah.
The natural kind of movement from Saudi Arabia to East
It's not that far. Geographically, it's far, but culturally, it's not that far.
No, mate. I even tell people, like, actually growing up in Saudi Arabia, in many ways, was less restrictive for me as a guy as well. But because there you're living in a theocracy, right? So you're not fighting something if you're being more religious. While here, there's a real issue with identity, especially if you're a minority culture. And so to engage with their identity, they become sometimes more religious. And that's what happened with us. So I grew up kind of quite religious. For me, I always loved science. Like, that was always a love for me. And science and also Islam. So for me, it was a natural combination, especially at the time. Do you remember sort of, Harun Yahya?
Yeah. He's crazy.
He's such a culty guy now. Crazy. I mean, he was crazy then, but you didn't really know how crazy he was.
We didn't know the whole...
No. Now he's like all really culty. And obviously Zakir Naik and all that. So, I mean, this is before Zakir Naik, actually. So it was like kind of, there was a big movement at the time anyways to kind of do this Islam and science stuff. And that was quite interesting for me. And as I got older, you see the world through that lens of Islam, and you need to deal with things like what the state of the world is, how the rights are for whether you're gay, whether you're a woman, etc. And so I used Islam as that kind of lens, and it gave me that structure. I think I was quite sort of intellectually religious as well. So a lot of people, some people are not very practicing, or, for them it's a ritualistic thing or a very personal thing. For me, it was very much intellectual. So I would read, my first book was Riyadh Salihin by Imam Nawawi at the age of 7,
Wow, that's amazing.
Like we were my whole family are a bit like this. And like for me, it was, I loved reading the stories of the Sahaba and, all that kind of stuff, the Seerah, etc. And so it was really not just a worldview, but it was true. And it was true because of history, because of science, because of, does that make sense? There's all these, you know, the literal miracle of the Quran, which obviously, as most Muslims do not speak Arabic.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, it's something you have to kind of accept when people tell you that. But you know, there was
was it not simply faith? It was like you reasoned with it. You found the evidence. You found the reasoning. You looked at the science, the science stuff, the history. You said, well, you know, it has to be true, as opposed to simply I have faith in that.
No, exactly.
You engage.
I had to engage. I really, and I'm like that naturally. Like I can tell you why this mobile phone is the way it is. Like I'm interested in how things are made and how the world works. So I've always been like that. And I think a lot of Muslims actually have that as well inside them, and they engage with it in different ways. So so I grew up kind of very, surrounded by Islam, and I went to school in not far from here, in Hainault, and over there, you know, I was one of the fewer Muslims at the time when I joined. And like there was a lot of racism, especially after 9/11. There was a lot of like anti-Muslim type stuff. And you know, my nickname at school was terrorist. I've got like a shirt I can show you, which has like bombs drawn around it. After you know the last day of school, like kids,
That's crazy.
In many ways, like the kids were just sort of the banter. You know,
kids are kids. I mean,
kids are kids. Yeah, but there was a real like, and for me that made me more religious actually, because it's like this sense of identity. And then, you know, I grew even older and I became more religious. But what happened is that, and whenever people ask me, how did you change your mind? You know,
the turning point.
They always ask about that turning point, and I think it's very rare that you come across people with real turning points. Sometimes you do, but not always. For me, what happened was that I say everyone has questions, right? Everyone, whether you're Muslim, whatever your political position is, whether you're atheist, all that. But these questions stopped making sense to me over time. The answers to the questions stopped making sense. So, for example, when I was, I think 7 or 8 years old, actually, I remember reading in the Riyadh al-Salihin about Aisha, you know, and the fact that she was playing with dolls and stuff like that. And as a kid, I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. Like, I'm the same age. How could she be married? Like, you know, you have these questions. And then as you get older, there are answers to these questions. Oh, she wasn't that age. Or, oh, that was of the time. Or, oh, women hit puberty a lot earlier at that time. And whatever. Right? But, so I had all these answers and it wasn't really a problem. But as I got older, I was like, does that really make sense? Did women actually hit puberty earlier? And even if they did, is that really ethical? Age, all that kind of stuff, right? So, and imagine that times 1,000, like across. Okay, what about gay people? Well, they're made by Allah. What about Islam and science? Well, some of it is doesn't really make sense. The right of women, you know, things like that. And I think it all started putting a lot of pressure into my head that something wasn't right.
So was it the sort of morality side? Because Aisha, gay people, these are sort of moral questions. They didn't seem to fit within your sort of understanding of
my framework,
what should be,
because Islam for me was something to create justice in the world, right? So it's a very big ask you're making of your faith background, right? You're saying this is how the world gets better, and human rights was very important to that. A lot of Muslims use the language of human rights because, you know, they understand anti-Muslim bigotry, they understand racism. So it's not very far a jump to go from that basis of human rights and say, wait a second, my faith position means I have to be bigoted towards
certain people.
Even if, so for example, there was 2 guys I grew up with and they were quite sort of camp. They were very feminine and they used to get bullied. I hate bullies, like even since I was a kid. And so I used to like to defend them. And I remember when I grew up, I found out that actually both of them came out as gay. And I remember thinking, if I for even 1 second have a problem with that in my head, I'm just as bad, you know? And that was such a difficult thing for me. Because how do you do that? How do you reconcile that, right? And like, I just knew that they were good people. And I was like, these kids in Hainault did not want to be gay. Like, you do not go to Hainault Forest High School and want to be gay because you will get beaten every day, right? So it's not like they chose to be gay. And even if they did, obviously, morally, like that's okay. But
that's their choice.
Just the point I'm trying to make is that.
But it's not as very.
How do you square that circle, right? So morality was a big problem. I mean, science was a big problem as well because as I got older, like, you learn. I was always been in science. I work in technology now. The stuff just was like, yo, like, hey, are mountains really pegs? Do earthquakes really get reduced in sites with mountains? Actually, it's the exact opposite. You know, things like that, quite basic stuff. And it's only now, actually, recently, if you look at some of the dawah stuff, where they're saying, oh, wait, science is actually not, you know.
Hamza Yusuf is right. He's saying that we should stop this whole science.
Which is funny because he's saying that, but then I've seen Aira still give out those books at stalls. So it's like, well, which one is it? Right. You know, but
both sides.
So but basically, that was kind of the journey.
Sort of turning point.
And I think it's very isolating, you know, like a lot of ex-Muslims I've spoken to, not just ex-Muslims, I work with Jehovah's Witnesses who leave, ultra-Orthodox Jews who leave, Catholics who leave, and they often say they were the only person in the world. So I felt like, how can 1.6 billion people be wrong? How can I be so arrogant that I don't believe in
you
this?
found it?
Yeah, I was like,
but everyone's missed it.
I was like, what? Do I think I'm that smart? I know I'm not that smart. So I was like, what is wrong with me? And then obviously very quickly, like Reddit especially, I realized there's other people.
Of course.
And I was like, oh my God, there's loads of people. And they were all online. So they're not real, you know, like we're talking.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a real human interaction. And so for me, the next natural step was, how do I meet people? How do I create kind of communities? So it wasn't, you can see like there's a natural progression. Like this happened, I feel bad. How do I move and make myself feel better? Okay, the next thing is to find people. Okay, the next thing is I want to meet them. The next thing is, no, this is so, it makes me so angry. Like why did I feel alone? Why did I feel like I'm so crazy? And then so the next step is faith-to-faithness, because it doesn't just affect Muslims. It
affects everyone,
everyone, right? High control concepts within the faith are very problematic for people. You know, and I think it's something that we need to band together for. And I want religious people. So I'm speaking at the British Islam Conference next on the weekend.
Oh, okay.
And for me, that's so important because I want religious people to be like, okay, you believe in freedom of religion. Great, join us, right? Don't fight us. There's no reason to fight.
No, there's no reason. No, I absolutely agree. So going back to, how did you react, or how did you feel when you met your first ex-Muslim?
Yeah.
How was that encounter?
It was so scary. So I remember this actually because so at the time there was no like mechanism in how to meet new ex-Muslims. Like so we all built that together. Like how do you vet people and stuff like that. So at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to be meeting this. It was a guy I was meeting randomly. He was actually coming in for some sort of dental course or something like that. Right. So he was in King's Cross for a bit, and I lived near King's Cross at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to meet this guy. He seems legit. He's got a long history on Reddit. But he might murder me. Like you don't know.
It's true. It's true. You never know.
You never know. So I chat to my I've got this friend who's like not ex-Muslim, but she's like knows my stuff. And so I was like, okay, can you meet the person and just check they're okay, and I'm going to be watching you from the side, and then if that person seems like they're not a psychopath, I'm gonna walk up and be like, hey, sorry I'm late. So I didn't end up doing that because it's so stupid, but I was that sort of paranoid. And then after the first person, it was like an addiction because I was like, oh my God, I've just told this person. He I was the first person he came out to as well. Like,
so you're first for both.
Yeah, first
for both. Good.
And it was like, well, I told my non-Muslim friends at the time, but it was first for him as well. I was like, oh my God, that was so easy. And I feel like I've known this person's problem in a way that no one else understands, you know? And so then I started doing it like obsessively. I just met people, like, I can't even tell you how many people I met, like back to back. And then started turning that into like groups and events and stuff like that.
That's
so
amazing.
Like I just met, and even today, I still meet people. Like I was in Leicester for business, and the Leicester group, which I set up, the Mulims group a couple of years ago, they need some vetting there. And I was like, I want to meet whoever's in Leicester, right? And I met this person, and they came out for almost the first or second time to me again. So it's a really privileged position.
It is because you're sharing a very intimate and sort of a very crucial moment in someone's life.
Yeah, exactly.
For many people, it's the first time they've even said the words to someone, and and you're there to sort of share that moment with them. So this leads on very nicely. Anger.
Yeah.
We get a lot of Muslims say this, and even non-Muslims, to be honest with you. Why are ex-Muslims so angry? Why can't they just get over it? Yes, fine, you've left your religion, but can you just shut up? You know, just get on with your life, move on, stop going on and on and on about it. I even made a video about this in a satirical way, which some people didn't get.
Yeah, some people were like, why are you discriminating?
Yeah. Some people messaged me saying, Veedu, I used to like you, man, but now you're sort of, what's up? But I said, listen, it's a joke, man, just chill out. But so why are on one level there is your genuine anger, and I think rightly so. But then there is this, even when there's not anger, we get accused of sort of, oh, you're so obsessed with this. Why
don't you just move on with your life?
Get on with your life, man. So what would you say?
Why do you even call yourself ex-Muslim? Why not call yourself an atheist?
Yeah. So what's your response to, firstly, the anger? And then this whole sort of just get on with your life sort of situation?
I mean, I think that sort of privileged position I have dealing with people who've left Islam and other religions means I see that stereotype everywhere. So ex-Mormons get called angry as well. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they're called apostates. They get called angry as well. Ultra-Orthodox Jews, same thing, right? So it's a common trope in general. And I think with ex-Muslims in particular, like the anger we have is if you understand what people go through, right? Like, which, you know, many people watching this will, but I'll give you an example. Like, there was a person that contacted my organization who was quite young, and anyone who's under sort of an adult age, they get immediately signposted to sort of charities for children. Right. So this person then contacted a child. They're an ex-Muslim girl. They wanted to take the hijab off. They're feeling very trapped, right? So immediately we said, contact this hotline for children's charity. They contacted that hotline, and the person who was listening on the other side said, listen to her story, and she said, your problems are to do with you leaving faith. Have you considered going back to your faith? Right. And
unbelievable.
You know what's really scary is that if that person was gay, or if they were a woman and they'd been through domestic violence, and someone
just go back to
like, you know, we would be up in arms. And because this is a microcosm, this is a micro story of what people go through, right? Even the most liberal. So in my charity organization, we don't make a massive distinction between liberal and conservative families, because there are differences, but what we care about is high control behaviors. So you can be in a very chill family and be a girl, for example, and suddenly you leave.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Or you're marrying a black guy, right? It's a big deal, right? So for me, it's much more about high control behaviors and not the family you're in. So you can be in a very conservative family and they can learn how to deal with you, while you can be from a liberal family and they can be crazy, right? So for me, when ex-Muslims start off feeling like they're the only person in 1.6 billion people who've left the faith and that isolated, right? And then they face kind of the mental health trauma they create them to themselves because of the fact that they don't believe and their family don't accept them, and then they're worried about, how am I going to live my life? And then they're worried about, is my state going to kill me or arrest me in many countries? And then they're worried about how they get treated by non-Muslims who sometimes actually they sometimes discriminate further towards ex-Muslims.
Blame the victim.
Blame the victim, right? Yeah. Even though we're a minority within a minority, and so we should be protected more. But it's the opposite. So when you have all these things cascading together, right? Of course they're angry, right? You know what? There's a time that we were called. There was a big thing about ex-Muslims being called native informants, right? And
could you explain what that means?
Yeah.
So what is a native informant?
So native informant, actually, the term comes from when the British were in India, and they would pay local Indians to rat out on their neighbors, right? And the idea is that you're basically a coconut. You're actually a white informant,
Uncle Tom,
Uncle Tom, that kind of stuff. So we get Uncle Tom called Uncle Tom as well.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I was dealing with someone who was Somalian. And she had left Islam and she was kicked out from home. And I remember like being so angry, and I couldn't tell why. I couldn't tell why the native informant. You know, sometimes you're angry as a reaction and you don't quite know why at the time. I just felt, I'm not an angry person normally, but I was like
fuming.
You don't even know. And like I then sat down and I thought about it. And I remember drawing that term to that girl that I was speaking to, the Somali girl. And so I wrote something about this, and the general gist of it was, okay, so there's this girl called, let's say her name is Sarah, right? Or Saima, or whatever, right? She's a Somalian girl. She grew up in a British context. She wore the hijab all her life. You know, she deals with the difficulties that you would face as a Somali girl in this world. And she left Islam, and she is now suddenly a white person. Because you left Islam, you're a traitor to your race, you're a traitor to your community. She just wants to live her bloody fucking life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me, drawing that parallel explained to me why I was so angry. Because obviously, because of my background, I deal with more ex-Muslims than almost anyone on the planet, right? Like, just by definition of my work. So like every time someone says that word native informant, my brain goes to immediately to those people. And I think, how dare you, racist?
So insulting.
No, and it's a racist term because you're basically saying that because a lot of ex-Muslims will be ethnic minorities, not all of them. Some of them are converts, or they're white and they're generationally Muslim. But they're basically saying we expect brown people to be a certain way,
act in a certain way.
Act in a certain way. We expect religious, the issues that come with certain sort of literalist religious traditions to be inherent and intrinsic to your skin color and to who you are. And when you're not like that, you must be being white, right? because apparently human rights are a white thing.
Being not hating gays is a white thing.
It's very white.
Being against honor killing is a white thing. You guys play your role. Be homophobic. Be sexist.
It's like they expect me to be like Apu from The Simpsons. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you want me to say ding ding ding. It's like it's so racist actually.
It is racist.
And I was saying this to Walid earlier. Like, I went to school with, there was a lot of racism in my school. I like that almost more than
you missed that. Yeah,
you can't. Just call me a packy. Just call me a packy. Do you know what I mean? Just call me a terrorist. That's easier.
I know where I stand with you. I know what, if someone is racist, like, oh, I don't like you. So, okay, fine. I don't like you. You don't like me. You stay in your lane. I'll stay in mine. Fine. But this paternalistic sort of, I know what's best for you, man. I know what's best for you. You know, be homophobic. You know, stop being so liberal, man. What do you mean? Stop being so white.
There was in Australia there was this thing where there was a vote for same-sex marriage which won. And there was a big thing because a lot of the Muslim communities were actually voting against it. There was a lot of campaigns against same-sex marriage in these communities going around. And a lot of my Muslim and ex-Muslim friends in Australia were talking about it. So the Muslim friends I have in Australia tend to be more like supportive of LGBT rights. So they were talking about it, saying, you know, this is a problem, we have to deal with it. There was this one kind of liberal Australian newspaper that wrote this absolutely bullshit racist article saying these Australian Muslims, they're on their migratory journey into Australia, and by forcing them to make a decision about homophobia, we are basically being racist because we're forcing them to make a decision, and things like that. I was like, no, they're homophobic. Like, it's homophobia. We have homophobia in our community. We have racism. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I've had so many. I mean, I don't know if you've come across this, but Black Muslims even who come to me, go, it's great. Like, I'll be friends with especially Asian Muslim guys, and they'll be like my best friend until I try to marry their sister.
Oh boy! You don't want to go there. None of that. Don't want to go there.
So we have problems, and it's like, let us deal with our problems. Don't like
stop making excuses for our shortcomings. Just hold us to everyone. Someone said here, lol, because we get accused of being bought by
the Jews. The Jews are every obviously.
I haven't seen any shekels. Can I say I haven't seen any of this Jewish money.
If you are a Jew and you really want to support me,
please support me. Yeah, exactly.
I ain't got any money.
I mean, exactly. Apparently, you guys are supporting me, but I'm not seeing any dime from you guys. But yeah, so there's this bigotry of low expectations that and if
or the Illuminati, by the way, I have never seen Illuminati money yet. I've been trying to approach you guys wherever you are.
Maybe they've given it to the wrong PayPal account. Exactly. I don't know. I haven't seen a penny of it, but great. Either way,
could you imagine if actually it was the Zakir Naiks of the world that got the Illuminati money?
I wouldn't be surprised.
It would make a lot more sense.
I wouldn't be surprised.
His nose is a bit like triangle sometimes. I think. I had that. Someone took my face.
Oh my god. Well, if it fits, it fits.
All right with it. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's this bigotry of low expectations that we are meant to act in a certain way and stop trying to be white, and that is the most. It's almost like they've monopolized good virtue.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good morals. Yeah. And they want to use it as their pets.
Orientalist, actually. It's very Orientalist. I mean, there's a question I'm just reading on it now. What do you guys do in the ex-Muslim groups and communities? Is there an age limit? Because I'm 17, but I left Islam when I was 12. So all the groups, whether it's ex-Muslim communities or other groups like ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, they have an age limit of 18. Yeah. That's very, very important. What I would say is go online and join the communities online until you turn 18, because you need an outlet still. But it's like that kind of question, those are the people who are apparently the native informants, right? Yeah. That kid who became ex-Muslim at 12 is apparently some sort of pro-white supremacist. It's so disgusting. Yeah.
So what you're saying is we're not allowed to change our minds.
We're not allowed to change our minds. We're not allowed to have our own thoughts. We're not allowed to have human rights. We take the lead from white people about who we are.
It's usually the left liberals. We know what's best for you. All this sort of people who. But yeah, do you want to read that? Do you want to read this one?
Guys, there are problems in every community, and bad elements of cultures. Have you guys studied Islam? I mean, objective research of Islamic teachings. Have you read the book, The Divine Reality? Who's that book by, actually?
I don't know.
I feel like I know it. I mean, let me flip this around. I think it's very difficult when you're a Muslim or an ex-Muslim to actually engage with these questions, because we're brought up in it, right? So what I do is I think, okay, how can you go outside the books? So have you read the Book of Mormon? I have. Right? Have you studied Book of Mormon properly to be able to say Mormonism is not for me? Because Mormons ex-Mormons get this all the time. Have you studied it enough? It's an easy way of trying to understand the other. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, it's Hamza sources.
Yeah.
Well, Hamza sources actually come out saying he doesn't agree with his science and Islam stuff recently. So
yeah, so he's backtracking.
He's actually backtrapping.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of studying Islam, look, like first of all, you don't have to study Islam to not believe in it. Most people believe in Islam because they're born into it.
Yeah.
When you're a kid, of course, you're going to believe whatever your parents tell you, right?
Of course.
Secondly, me personally, yes, I did. I grew up, like, my first book was Riyadh al-Salihin by Imam Nawawi. You know, I still read Islam. Like, I'm obsessed with Islamic theology. I love it. It's actually
very interesting.
It's very interesting, actually.
Yeah, it is very
and it's especially interesting when you're an ex-Muslim because you can apply academic thinking to it as well. You can kind of combine Islamic theology.
I think it actually enriches the experience when you study it objectively, not trying to prove it's right or wrong. Just look at it for what it is. And also, so can I say on that point, what do I have to do to become Muslim? Just say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. I don't need a degree. I don't need education. I don't need. No one's gonna ask me. Wait, before you say something. Before you convert to Islam.
You never get dudes who are doing dawah stalls who are like, listen, don't convert to Islam. Don't say those words. I'm gonna give you some books on like.
Then I'm gonna test you. Then I'm gonna go through it. But when it comes to leaving Islam, well, brother, have you studied it? Have you researched? You know, I was talking to one of my friends. He was saying, "Oh, bro, you know, to understand these things takes decades and years." I'm like, "You want me to study decades just so I can realize I'm not a Muslim?"
Exactly. And you know what the thing is? The people who do study it for decades, do leave it, they're generally not allowed to speak about it. So I know people who are like the children of quite famous you know, scholars and imams and things like that.
Oh really?
Like,
I didn't know that.
Like they don't know that. I mean, like, I'm not saying Zakir Naik level, but think about that kind of level.
Right.
A lot of their children, because they see hypocrisy, they see and they learn Islam quite thoroughly. I think the problem is people leave Islam because they spend a lot of time reading up about it. Most ex-Muslims, I would say most ex-Muslims, not all ex-Muslims, but most ex-Muslims are on average more educated about Islam than most Muslims. They'll know more about what goes on because we hide in the Muslim community. We hide a lot of the stuff about Islam. We hide, for example, that Khalid bin Walid, you know, killed a man's wife and married him his wife the next day. Essentially, in Islamic fiqh, you're not allowed to do that. Umar al-Khattab actually sent him away. He wanted him murdered, but Abu Bakr sent him away, and he wasn't murdered. But within a fiqh context, that's illegal. But he got away with it because he was winning the wars in Persia, right? So this stuff is traditional Islamic history. But we don't know about it, right? We don't know that. You know, we don't know, like Umar al-Khattab, when he was invading, he was trying to invade the kingdom of Makuria, which is a Christian kingdom in Africa. He lost twice. Amr bin al-As's son, I think, was trying to, no, Amr bin al-As was trying to do it. I think it was him. And because they lost twice and the kingdom of Makuria didn't want battle still, they signed a treaty, a Baqt, and the Baqt basically said that the Islamic Empire was going to get 300 slaves to 320 black slaves from Nubia every year. Now, when Muslims go, oh, Islam was there to kind of liberate and say, well, Umar al-Khattab was the caliph. He could have said no to the slaves. They asked for it and they took 320 slaves every year from Black Nubia. I had no idea. See, exactly, right? And we don't know about it. I only learned about this after I had left Islam. So when I left Islam, there's a lot of arguments, but it's when you leave it, you're like, wow, there's so much there.
So much stuff out there.
So much stuff.
And just on that point, I think when this is, maybe we can go into this next, is that when you study Islam,
we've got Sheikh Pumpkin al-Burtukali al-Halawini al-Harami going, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Sheikh. Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you, brother.
On this point of when you study Islam from the perspective it's true, and then everything you do, you try and prove it. I suppose you come across a very limited number of sources.
Yes.
Whereas if you study objectively, you'll get sources like what you just mentioned now, where you think, hang on a second, well, how come we not taught this in mosque? How come we not taught this in our Sunday class or whatever?
There is a need for, I mean, there's a question just now on that on what you said, which is, where can I, as a non-Muslim or Muslim, study Islam objectively? It's a very difficult problem because, you know, I mean, I would say some of the places that I like are, there's a Muslim convert called Jonathan A.C. Brown.
Yes, right? I'm familiar with him.
I don't really like his ethical positions because he's all right with, you know, child marriages and stuff.
He rigorously defends that.
Yeah, he does.
He does defend that.
His book, Misquoting Muhammad, is a very non-bullshit view of Islam. So it's actually a pretty good book.
Okay.
There's also, the problem is a lot of the stuff that's kind of anti-Islam, it's a bit biased. Like, it reads quite biased. It's very like, it's not non-emotional, you know. And I think there's a space, actually
agenda behind.
Yeah. There is a bit of a well, they have very good facts. So Ibn Warraq, for example, his book is chock full of facts. Why I'm Not a Muslim. I read it. It's very dense, and I've checked the source for a lot of it. It's pretty well resourced. It's very, very well researched. But like, because Ibn Mubarak is an ex-Muslim, and he left Islam at a time when it's very difficult to do it, so he's very angry towards Islam for all the right reasons. But it makes his book that if you're a Muslim, it'll be hard to read it objectively. Does that make sense? Right. So I think there's a real space here actually to have these discussions, and yeah, I mean, Misquoting Muhammad is a pretty good book. Why I'm Not Muslim by Ibn Mubarak is a pretty good book. There's stuff out there. It's just that you kind of need to piece it together right now.
So this leads me on to my next point, which we were talking about before. The difference in learning about Islam through the Western sort of lens or the sort of Middle Eastern, Asian sort of lens. And then you have people like Yasir Qadhi, who his traditional Islamic knowledge was in Medina, but then he was studying in the West. And then now his perspective has changed. And some people were not happy with that because the Western perspective does not assume Islam is correct and we just got to prove it. It's saying, well, let's look at the history, let's look at the facts. Was Muhammad the prophet? Was he not Muhammad? Was he not a prophet? Is the Quran really the word of God? Blah blah blah. These fundamental questions, which maybe we miss, or we don't even address within the Muslim world. You have to take seriously within the Western education.
I mean, I think actually I would reframe that question slightly.
Go for it.
Right, because I think the Muslim countries had that discussion. So there is actually work that came out of the Muslim world that got shut down quite quickly. And freedom of speech is a big one here.
Big.
Now, even in the West, whatever the West is, being able to discuss Islam properly, it's a bit of an uphill struggle, actually. So academically, there's actually a lot of issues because people who said, hey, maybe the sanctity of hadith is not as legitimate as we thought. Maybe it's not as solid. Those people were very controversial early on. Now it's normalized. Now it's everyone thinks that, right, in academia. Then there's someone who said, was Muhammad, like just like they said for Jesus, where they said, was the Jesus we know mythologically the same as the historical Jesus, and was Jesus even real? Those questions were very controversial in Christianity and academics around Christian theology for a while. Now they're kind of accepted as like it's a question. In the Islamic academic world, it's very new and it's still very controversial. So even in the West, I would say it's a bit difficult. But yeah, and I think we're now starting to have some space to have these conversations. In Germany, there's a lot of academic work coming out that's quite good about kind of Islamic history and stuff like that. In the UK, we have the SOAS, the Center for Islamic Studies. So I go there quite a lot just to see what they're talking about in the lectures, and they're quite interesting. They're quite good, and they can be quite objective in some ways. They don't always touch objective issues, partly because of where the funding comes from. With a lot of the universities, that's a problem. But it's changing. I think it is changing.
And this leads on to the next point: is that how is that the dawah scene? In general, changing. So we could talk about UK or US, but there's a lot of dawah going on in the UK.
Do you want to explain what dawah is?
So dawah is basically the call to Islam. You're calling or inviting people to Islam. So whether it's preaching or you sort of meet with people and say, "Oh, this is what Islam is about." Brother, sister, whatever it is, you're Muslim, you just don't realize it. You know, it's so logical. If you look at things this way and that way, and there is a proof for God or logical
like street
proof.
Preaching,
all this street preaching kind of stuff you see.
Zakir
Naik, there's Ali Dawah Man. A lot of other people, Muhammad Hijab as well, who's sort of on the scene. Like Speakers Corner is a very big sort of part.
I mean, and there's a range, isn't there? Because there's kind of these very like street dudes who are like bros, like I used to like sleep with girls and like smoke pot, and then I saw the faith, and and then there's like Yasir Qadhi on the other side, which is the dawah. He's like a Salafi but a bit reformed in some ways. And so there's a kind of range. I think it's changed quite a lot. I don't know if you remember how it used to be 10-15 years ago. Like it was a lot more like, I would say it was very populist and very accepted, and like I would see quite intelligent Muslims sharing pretty stupid videos, right? Do you know what I mean? Like there was that Dawah Man one on like being an atheist is like drinking your dad's sperm. Do you remember that? I think that broke him. I think that broke him.
That did.
Even the Muslims were like, "Yo, this is
a step too far.
This is like
step
really
too far.
Bad. Right? This is very bad logic." Do you know what I mean? And it's like what? So the only thing stopping you from drinking your dad's semen is that is Islam. Like
otherwise everyone will be.
Anyways, so like I think things have changed because we have. I think actually ex-Muslims are a big part of this, because sure, a lot of Muslims may not want to engage with ex-Muslims, but we're in the back of their heads now. You know what I mean?
We're there.
We're there.
Visible. You've given us visibility.
I think we all have together, like, in different ways, right? And I think comedy works in a great way. Activism works in a different way. And I think altogether, it's really created visibility. And what's happened is it's forced the dawah people to step up their A game, right? So that's why Hamza Yusuf has gone from very comfortably,
because he knows he get destroyed.
No, exactly. I mean, he's gone from very comfortably talking about this Islam and science stuff to finally agreeing, actually, this is all bullshit, right? And this is based on stuff that was a lie from the 70s by Sheikh Zindani, who got a lot of money from the Saudi government. Most Muslims don't like the Saudi government.
Maurice Bouquet.
And Maurice Bouquet, well, they were paid, basically, right?
Oh, I could
so they were paid. So I actually helped track down one of the scientists for someone who he's one of the he was a Thai scientist, I think. And like, that person doesn't talk to people anymore about it because it was all a bit hush-hush, right? And that was in the 70s. So imagine for 40 years, 30 years, it's been
peddling the
same thing.
Same thing again and again. So you want to take a question, or
do I listen to the Arabic Muslim YouTubers? I mean,
there's Sharif.
I love him so much.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
He's hiding though, isn't he?
He's in Egypt still. I'm surprised. I thought he would have left, but
I wouldn't do it, but I have a lot of respect for him.
I've got a ton of respect for him. He and his videos are great. Videos are really great.
I think they're all fighting each other on the YouTube.
Yeah, normally the comment section is sort of a show in itself. We just seem to. We're actually the sort of sideshow. They're the main event. They're actually the main event. But that leads me on to another point, and which something which you touched upon earlier is that we've helped them raise the game. So some of the sloppy arguments that they would normally push. They've sort of said, we can't really get away with this because it's actually ex-Muslims who know this stuff just as well as we do, or better.
Or even non-Muslims who are interested in this area. They're reading materials from ex-Muslims. And they're understanding, actually, the things that these guys are saying. So, for example, the death penalty for apostates, right? Now, a lot of the ways that Muslims and Islamists will get away with, and dawah people get away with it.
Treason.
They say, no, you have the no, you have the right to do it. We don't live in an Islamic state. Okay, so what happens if you live in an Islamic state? It never really happens. Well, what do you mean it doesn't happen? It has to be by the order of the Khalifa. So you have to have the order of the Khalifa, and 4 people have to witness someone saying it in the public square. It's like, so basically, if I go to a Muslim state, Islamic state, and there's a caliph, and I say I don't believe in religion, and I don't believe in Islam, and this is why I can be murdered. At that point, they'll say yes. You have to take them through the whole journey.
They play these games.
So slimy.
It's
so slimy.
This is what happened. I don't know if you guys. I'm sure you must have heard about the Ali Dawah and Tommy Robinson confrontation. They finally met, and there's so many things we could discuss. But one of the things about that which really annoyed me was when Tommy was trying to sort of pin him down and say, "Do you believe that apostates in Islam should be killed?" And he said, "No, we live in the UK." No.
Yeah.
Okay, he said, "Okay, what about an Islamic state?" He goes, "Oh well, this is," he goes, then he said, "If the Sharia says X, I believe X." He didn't say either should be killed. And then he said, "Oh well, hang on, what about Edward Snowden?" And he goes, "That's treason. Leaving Islam is equivalent to treason," and it's not, because treason means that if I sell my country's secrets, I'm endangering the whole country. But if I leave Islam, you're still safe. I'm not endangering anyone. In fact, my life is endangered now because I live Islam. So it's a false equivalency.
It's a very, very false equivalency. I mean, and it's very funny about that Tommy Robinson Ali Dawah thing, because I saw that. I mean, I've met both of them.
Right. So you can maybe talk to some of the encounters you've had with these.
Honestly, I think Ali Dawah is really, really thick. He's really, really stupid, and I don't say that's very normally, right? I think we try to understand people, but
how has he got so many followers? That's something I don't understand. No, Ali Dawah, they got so many people.
Who are his followers? A lot of the followers are very young people who are looking for answers out there. Yasser Qadhi might be a little bit too over their heads, for example. They might not relate to Yasser Qadhi. They might not relate to people like that. Zakir Naik might be too stupid or too Indian, basically. He's a very Indian way of preaching.
He's not cool.
He's not cool. But Ali Dawah and Dawah Man, they kind of
from the street, they wear the clothes, they speak the language.
Dawah Man's I had a rap career. Which rap? I've never seen you rap. Do you know what I mean? But basically, what happens with these people is that they sort of create a narrative that ticks a lot of the young people's boxes, doesn't really fulfill them, and then what happens is these young people grow out of it. So I know so many people who don't follow them anymore because they've just realized they're a bit thick. But Ali Dawah, for example, he just refuses to debate people. So he agrees to debate people, and then he just doesn't show up.
Abdullah Samir, who came on the show a few weeks ago, very nice, intelligent.
He's a lovely guy.
Very nice.
Abdullah Samir used to do that himself. He used to speak at different conferences. So and the point is that people like that, I think that it's very difficult. They're a bit like ex-Muslims in some ways because it's very difficult for them to leave now. Ali Dawah cannot leave his little position he's created for himself, right? Dawah man can never do that. They can only get more and more into it. And then if they disappear, you'll find them 10 years later as an atheist, but they will not talk about it because it happens. I've seen it happen to a few people.
Really?
Right? A lot of the Dawah people, they realize later on. So I know a lot of Hizb ut-Tahrir people from the, like 10, 20 years ago. Some of them are ex-Muslims, some of them are progressive Muslims, some of them are more like, I don't want to think about it. But they were the people on the street, and they were miles more intellectual than these people, right? Like they were, because Hizb ut-Tahrir taught philosophy. They're very, their focus is politics and philosophy. So they recruited very intelligent people from universities.
Marginalized, like
these kind of people. And with a lot of the new Dawah scene, the youngers, they're really thick. Like a lot of them are just really, really thick. And unfortunately, that is what young people can latch onto before they leave it. But they just continuously fill their followers with newer, younger people as the other ones leave. Do you know what I mean?
I see what you're saying. So it's almost like sort of when you have a cartoon show. I've grown out of some of the cartoons, but the next 10-year-old...
I'll give you an example. Ali Dawah did a video about face-to-face videos on ex-Muslims, right? He did a video where he cut out things that people were saying. He misconstrued.
And then he reacted to them.
Now, what's great is these dumbasses don't realize they've given me 500,000 views for ex-Muslims. Now, so that means 500,000 Muslims who didn't know ex-Muslims exist now know we exist. Show you're cussing us out. Show you're teaching Muslims lies about ex-Muslims. But you know what? I'm okay with that because 5 years ago, I didn't know I could exist.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's true.
So it's like,
Thank you guys.
Even strategically, you're thick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's true. It's true. And actually, those videos, they were so disparate. Like, look at this. Look at how it's just.
I loved that Muslims were like commenting, going, "Hey, this is a bit insulting." Like she's talking about her story leaving. She's talking about girls, especially because girls can relate to other women, right? Girls can relate to being kicked out, being ostracized,
judged, all that kind of stuff.
You show a bit of shoulders, suddenly you're a slut. These kind of things. So I saw a lot of Muslim girls actually commenting on that video, going, "Hey, this is not okay. This is not comfortable." And they were saying, as a Muslim, this is not okay. And I like that because I'm like, of course you need to fight that.
There are fair-minded Muslims out there who even they're like, guys, you're being idiots.
Yeah, you're being idiots.
Stop it.
Exactly.
We've got a question here. Do you think there is an issue with claiming there is one true form of Islam and arguing from a point of atheism or Islamism that true Muslims should be more extreme or liberal is missing the point? That's a very good question.
That's a very, very good question.
Is there one true form of Islam? Let's start with that.
I think there can't be because I don't believe Islam is from God. And if Islam is not from God, it's from humans, and human beings can make anything they want of anything, right? However, Islam has a specific problem with literalism because even very liberal, progressive Muslims, many of them will accept literalism. So they'll believe the Quran is the word of God. That always will create problems because what the Quran says and the Hadith say has a lot of crazy stuff in it, as well as it has stuff that you can kind of take positively. So my problem with Islam is literalism, not that there's any one true way of... If you're not a literalist, that means there's more than one true Islam, right? But if you're a literalist, it makes it very difficult because you're generally stuck to what the Quran and the Hadith say and the 4 schools of thought and all that kind of stuff. I do find it difficult, though, when people are so one-minded with Islam, because I think if you want to be fair, like Islam has had a long history, right? It is a religion. It is made by people, and it has a history. The Mu'tazili were the rationalist. They were problematic as well. So they jailed Imam Hanbal. I think Hanbal, so they were problematic as well. They had the Minha, which is like an inquisition. So but there's a history there, and we don't talk about that history. And I think even atheists and ex-Muslims and all that, we kind of need to engage with that as well. It is interesting. It is important that we get the facts right.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we are just
committing the same errors,
right?
And I've got a very good question here. I think someone asked me, what is your opinion on Tommy Robinson? So you met her. He's a very controversial, interesting character. On some things I agree with what he says. On some things I'm like, either what you're saying is wrong or you're doing it the wrong way. So what do you?
So like when I met Tommy Robinson, just honestly, he just reminded me of my like dudes on the street who do like dawah. They're the same types of people for me. They often come from a place where they're angry about something, or even sometimes a place of good. But the language they use and the people they surround themselves with and the ideas they surround themselves with become very problematic for the human rights of other people. So Tommy Robinson, I think his early work was definitely very anti-Muslim. Like, I don't see any question about that. I think recently what's been happening is he's been realizing it's problematic for him to be that like that.
It's counterproductive.
It's counterproductive. So he's becoming more and more careful. Now, whether I believe that's actually genuine or not, I don't know. I can't reach into
strategic or whatever.
I do not at all. I don't. Basically, he's like in some ways he's like who's the French guy? Tariq Ramadan, right?
Yeah.
But Tariq, when he's speaking to French audience, when he's speaking to an Arabic audience, when he speaks to an English audience, he says different things. It's like Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera Arabic will say one thing.
Yeah.
Al Jazeera English is like super liberal. Al Jazeera Plus is like, we love the gay people.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't say that in the Arabic channel.
Yeah.
But it's this kind of different faces that I don't really like. So when he was on, I think, Rubin Report, the stuff he was saying, like it's like, okay, yeah, that's true. But he doesn't say the things that he says in Britain that he, you know what I mean? So he'll say,
she waters it down.
These are the problems we see, and thus we need to do X, right? We need to limit immigration or whatever the kind of things he believes. But in America, he kind of said, these are the problems, and then he stops it there, and he's very careful how he talks. And so I saw a lot of people supporting him after that Rubin Report interview, which I saw, and I thought, like, hey, it's all right. Yeah. But that's the problem, because it's like people miss what he said elsewhere. Tariq Ramadan is exactly the same. He'll say stuff in the West that it's like, okay,
liberal guy.
Oh, okay, he's anti-extremist, he's, this and that. He understands his problems, but like, actually, he's an Islamist. Do you know what I mean? Right. So my problem is that
sorry, maybe because he's a complex guy. Yeah, but do you think he's done more good or more bad?
More bad. He found the EDL, mate. The EDL, like I used to protest against the EDL during my very far left days.
Yeah,
for 3 months.
For 3 months.
But look, the EDL. What the problems with the EDL is that the EDL gave a narrative to definitely working class white people who are very badly off, right?
Completely
so badly off,
disenfranchised.
Completely disenfranchised. They have no voice.
I agree.
And because they're white, no one's gonna listen to them, right? Even though there is a class problem in this country,
there is,
right? Yeah. And he gave them a voice that directed their anger and energy towards minority groups rather than the real problems in this country, which are not really the minority groups because they don't really have power, right? The real problems in this country include class and things like that. So my problem is that their focus was wrong, the language they use was wrong. They've created a lot of problems for Muslims, like Muslim family and stuff like that, especially up in, like, if you talk to ex-Muslims from like the north, they hate the EDL because they've seen what the EDL do. They march down the streets, they create a lot of anti-Muslim kind of sentiment, they say anti-Muslim stuff. Now Tommy can try to disconnect himself from it, but he's part of it. Like he was supporting Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer. Like, Pamela Geller is anti-Muslim. She's not an anti-Islamist, right? There are people who are very angry anti-Islamist who are not anti-Muslim. Even if I don't always like their narratives, I can't say they're anti-Muslim. Pamela Geller is an anti-Muslim, right? So
for her, it's all of us. It's not just a few. It's the whole thing.
Yeah. So I think Tommy, he's changing. I've seen that. Whether it's an honest change or not, I don't know. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reach into the hearts and minds of people. I'll get called like I'll be called like a secret Muslim for that. Do you get taqiyya stuff? Like,
of course. Someone said your YouTube channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find your YouTube channel and post it in the comment section, and I'll put it in the description after the video as well.
So it's basically Faith to Faithless is my charity program, and the YouTube stuff is if you just look for Imtiaz Shams, you can normally find stuff.
So if you type in Imtiaz Shams in Google or YouTube, you will find YouTube. I will definitely put it in the description.
I actually called my channel Piecemeal.
Yeah, why was that?
Because I didn't want my name on it, because I work as well. Like, this is all voluntary for me, so I didn't want to mess it up too much. Yeah. But then I just stopped. I just gave up. I was just like, you know what? Actually, I'm just like,
fair enough.
Yeah.
Shams.
Say Shams, yeah.
Okay, so there's another question. Sorry, this is up a bit. So okay, they're just having a chat with themselves.
You've got a lot of questions here today.
We've got a lot of questions.
I especially want to see questions from Muslims, actually, because I'm very interested in kind of how Muslims interact with.
When will you see the discussion with Muhammad Hijab? So are they saying that? I mean,
Muhammad Hijab. Remind me who that is.
He's this big guy with a beard.
There's a lot of big guys.
There's a lot of big guys with a beard. Hang on. So if you said Muhammad Hijab, I'm sorry, I can't read. Sorry.
Muhammad
Hijab.
It's a very weird name, isn't it? Who has a second name called Hijab? Never come across the second.
Yeah.
I've heard of Jannat and stuff like that, but not Hijab. Muhammad Hijab.
This guy. This one.
Oh, I've seen him. He's really thick.
So
I just don't talk to stupid people nowadays. You know?
So when you go, how often do you go to Speaker's Corner and interact with these kind of people?
What's really funny is I actually went 2 weeks ago because my friend is filming a series for YouTube.
Okay.
She's the person I did the Vice documentary with.
Okay.
Poppy. And we went to speak to, it's not out yet, but we went to speak to the audience members and just talk about kind of, the people in the audience, like why are they there and stuff like that. And someone recognized me and just walks up going, oh, you're that person from BBC, yes? And we were talking and he's like a Jamaican convert. And it just went, so there was these two uncles who were like shouting about Islam stuff and they had like 20-30 people and literally everyone just moved to like our side and it was like 50 people. It was completely crazy. And the conversations were very interesting. And what I love is that because we are from the Muslim community, like I'm still so engaged. I find a lot of Muslims agree with me.
Oh, really?
Because so, like for example, that the convert guy was saying, the apostasy law in this country is not there because we live in kufr, but in an Islamic country it's okay. It would be, and I was like, and he was talking about his children, and I was like, you've got 2 kids, you love them. What if one of them left Islam? And he was like, no, they would never leave Islam. Because I would raise them with the correct kind of aqidah. And I was like, okay, I have dealt with more ex-Muslims than almost anyone on the planet. Very few people have met more ex-Muslims than me. A lot of ex-Muslims are your kids because they're the kids of people who are very religious, very proselytizing, things like that. So I was like, if your son or daughter did leave Islam, what would you do? And actually he thought about it and he actually froze and started going because he's never thought about it, and that man is gonna, I hope it's not gonna be a negative thing on his kids, but actually I think when one of his kids either takes the hijab off or leaves Islam or anything like that, I hope that the time between then and now will allow him to think and chill about the hell out, right? And it happens. I see it happen quite a lot,
We've got it on a scale from flamboyant to raging.
How metro is that?
That's a good point. He does wear some of these t-shirts. So not that I'm against it. I'm saying some of
the dawah people, they make me laugh because they wear a kohl under their eyes because it's Sunnah.
Yeah.
And I just want to be like, because they're like very rampantly homophobic sometimes. And they're like, oh, these men are dressed like women. But I'm like, you're wearing eyeliner. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have no problem with that. I think
go for it. Yeah.
But it's like, you do understand.
Yes. So, Veedu Vidz, do you think that Muslim priests all around the world cherry pick the hadiths they want on purpose? Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a massive problem with, like you were saying, there's certain history that we don't want to talk about, certain slaves or sex slaves or certain wars or whatever it is, certain battles that we don't want to talk about, that we don't want to highlight. If we go into a mosque or you go into your sort of Friday service, khutbah, or your Sunday school or whatever it is, we don't talk about these controversial or difficult topics. We talk about, be nice. And it's fine. I mean, of course, I'm kind of, in a way, talk about charity and you give to people, you help the poor. Great. But these topics, you will never hear about them.
Well, I mean, one thing that's really interesting is whenever, so ex-Muslims often have this thing where they get taken to an imam when they're having doubts, right? Or when they've left. And those imams get so uncomfortable because they're not used to having these discussions.
They're probably not even trained in how to have. So let me ask you a question. When you were going through this phase of doubts and questions, did you ever go to an imam or even someone who's maybe more religious? When you spoke to them and you brought these questions up to them, what was their response? Were they uncomfortable or was it simply
very uncomfortable? Yeah, they got very, because the thing is, I know Islam less than that person that I spoke to. I don't want to get into too many details, specific details, because of the situation. But that person is very, very educated about Islam. Someone very close to me. But I know a lot of science. I know a lot of Islamic history. So we had this really interesting interaction where I said something about jinns and the scientific problems with jinns, because jinns are made of smokeless fire. Problem is, fire is a process. It's like saying that this microphone is made from buying it from the shop. It doesn't make a sense because the shop is a process. Like buying it is a process. Fire is a process. So how can something be made out of a process? So I said that, and he was like, okay. He went off and did research. And basically the point is, the things that he was like, look, like, okay, it's your choice, but it makes people uncomfortable because they're not really used to it. I mean, one thing I just want to, there's something that was just said I want to take back, actually. Imran Ali said, Muhammad Hijab is a professional. He's a teacher. To dismiss people as thick is not cool. It would be interesting if you and him could arrange a discussion. It would be awesome, dude. Actually, you know what? Like, you're right. I shouldn't have said that. I've seen his videos. I did think he was a bit dumb, but to be honest, I need to not do that. So So actually, I'd be keen to have a discussion with
Muhammad Hijab, if you're watching.
Like, I am sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Actually,
it's fine. It's fine. I would say that let's have some positive discussion and engagements.
No, you know why it's important, because I have met Ali Dawah. I do think he's not interested in discussion. Muhammad Hijab, I have not met. I've seen his videos. He could be like, I don't know him as a person, so actually I shouldn't have said that. So, you know, I shouldn't have said that. So I'm happy to have a discussion.
There you go, Muhammad Hijab.
I'm around London, you know.
Muhammad Hijab, if you want to have a chat, get in touch with this man. So let me now. We've talked a lot about people who may be thick or not thick, whatever. Put that to a side.
Thick means a very different thing to millennials, by the way. Now,
yeah. But can you maybe talk about certain Muslim scholars or people or influencers and teachers that you look up to, or you think, you know what, they've got some really good points. I really appreciate the work that they're doing, and they've got a very good approach to their religion. Who would you say?
What I'm going to say ranges from controversial to Muslims to not controversial at all. So Yasir Qadhi, for example, I think he's very intelligent. He has studied Islam through an academic perspective as well, which is very important. That's why he's changing some of his views. So I do like him. Not that I necessarily think he's good for people, because he obviously leads people. He used to be quite sectarian. He's changed his views.
He's very Salafi back in the day.
He used to be very, very sectarian. Jonathan A.C. Brown, similarly, I think he's quite an honest person in the sense that how he discusses Islam, he does do it quite dispassionately. And I don't agree with his ethics, but I do respect his work. There's also Hamza Yusuf. He's quite interesting.
Yes, Hamza Yusuf. He was someone I used to love. I used to watch hours and hours.
He was quite extreme back in the day, and 9/11 happened. And he changed his views.
Oh, really?
I knew an ex-Muslim that went to his mosque, and he told me that Hamza Yusuf was very extreme.
Really?
And after 9/11, he changed.
How was he extreme? In what sense?
He was very, very, like, from what I understand, he was very
but
extreme.
I mean, his background was very Sufi, sort of.
No, I might be wrong in this.
He went to Mauritania. He learned under Sufi scholars. All this kind of stuff.
I just spoke with someone who grew up going to his mosque, and he said that Hamza Yusuf was very, 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 very extreme. And then he became, I don't know much more than that, but it's a story.
It's a very interesting transformation.
I find transformation is very interesting. So I mean, someone else would be Sheikh Osama Hassan, you know, from
he's
controversial because you know, but. I actually used to go to Quran classes with Sheikh Osama Hassan.
Man, so, the world is a small place.
As an ex-Muslim, though.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's it. Why?
Because I wanted to know what someone like Osama, how they would engage with certain of the ideas in the Quran. And also, I'm a nerd. I love studying it.
It's
very interesting. So, like, he's a real fountain of knowledge. Like, he
knows his stuff.
You'll talk to him about something, and he'll bring up, like, you know, some random story of this random book that he read, which is, like, you know, from the time of Ibn Taymiyyah or something. I don't know, you know. So I respect him quite a bit. There's also Mufti Abi Layth. He's very funny, charismatic,
very easy, approachable.
Very steeped in tradition though as well.
Yes,
which is kind of. So there's this very interesting difference between the sheikhs and imams and just orators who've moved away from very traditional positions and become very progressive, whatever that word means, or people who are still in the traditional position and have kind of make space. There's a guy in Canada, do you know who I'm talking about? He's got big beard.
Shabir Ali.
Yes, I really like him. He's very good as well.
Yep. So Shabir Ali, Mufti Abi Layth.
Who do you like?
I would say those same people I would like as well. I'm just trying to think of some other people. I like Abdul Karim Saroush, who's an Iranian thinker. He's an Iranian philosopher.
Okay.
And I read his book, I think it's Islam, Freedom, Democracy, or something like that. And that book I read as a Muslim, and that book blew my mind.
Right.
Because he is a very devout Muslim, but he's saying that when Muhammad received his revelation, that it was colored by his own personality. So he's openly saying,
"Oh, that's very interesting."
And I was like, "You can't say that.
You can't say that.
You can't say that kind of stuff. Why are you saying? I thought you're Muslim." But he's saying, "No. There is almost sort of his personality is imprinted on the Quran." And for a normal Muslim, that's like kufr or blasphemy. But he's openly saying this, and he's saying it's fine, you know, that there is a kernel of truth within the Islam. There's a kernel of truth. It's our job to extract it. So he, for example, was saying something like, like in Newcastle, it's like taking coal. Like he gave an example, like saying taking coal to Newcastle, or taking cumin to Iran, or taking some the dates to Arabia. They all kind of mean the same thing, but they're localized in their thing. So he gave this sort of local understanding versus universal understanding,
which
the
is
minimalist,
how Islam
maximalist.
generally developed. Anyways, like Islam in Southeast Asia is very different from Islam in
very
South
different.
Asia, you know,
very different.
I mean, another person actually, and there's a few more people coming out like this who are. There's a guy called Mohammed Ghilan who's in Canada, and he is he's a neuroscientist,
right?
And he kind of came out in support of evolution,
right?
Basically, right? Because he's he studies neuroscience.
He knows his stuff.
Yeah, he knows his stuff, and so there are these kind of Muslim orators and in some cases scholars who I think have got to like. Sheikh Osama Hassan is a physicist. He's a quantum physicist.
Yeah.
He knows his shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it really bothers me when people say Osama Hassan is this and that and stuff like that. Because it's like, first of all, he knows more about everything than you. Like, there's no way I can compete with this guy on physics, right? I brought my business partner, who's a physicist himself, a quantum physicist, met Osama Hassan, and they were both very impressed with each other because, you know, they've got that background. And my business partner's family are quite religious. They used to be quite religious. So it's very interesting, right? And Osama Hassan really knows his stuff. So I find the problem with social media is people like Ali Dawah Man, they get heard where people like Osama Hassan don't really, because they're much more intelligent in how they kind of... They're
not sensationalists.
They're not sensationalists. And you have to be sensationalist in social media, unfortunately, to do well.
Unfortunately, I 100% agree with you. It's unfortunately part of the game where you've got to, oh, wow, look at this breaking news, something happened and whatever. That's where you get the views. Okay, there's something about Ali Dawah there. But, okay, so let's see if we got some comments or questions. Kind of Shia. Okay, for some reason, it always come back to the Shias.
Yeah, Shias always have. I remember I spoke to a guy who ran a pretty interesting Muslim group in the UK, and he's Shia, and we met for dinner. He was asking me about why I left Islam and stuff, and I told him my story, and he laughed and he said, "Imtiaz, I have more in common with your story as a Shia growing up in London than I have with Sunnis, because the Sunnis don't treat him like a Muslim. They always try to convert him to, you know, I mean, they don't accept his faith position. They think he's kufr, well, or they think he's, you know, whatever. So
it's interesting because when I learn about certain historical events, but through the Shia lens, I find it a bit more real because there's the Sunni ways. Oh, everything was fine. Everyone loved each other. All the Sahabas were friends and companions. Oh, they're hugging. Shia's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's very different.
Exactly. And even within Sunni Islam, there are clear stories. Like Umar al-Khattab hated Khalid bin Walid, his cousin. I mean, you know, but we don't talk about it. The Shias do. I mean, there's a question here about from a Muslim, Imran Ali, saying, what attracts me to Islam is the pure monotheism, also inclusion of all prophets and their invitation towards pure monotheism. Zakir Naik makes mistakes, but he makes good points. If you're interested in that, actually interested in that, Imran, what I would do is start studying syncretic theology and start studying the history of Middle Eastern and theology. Like, especially look at how the Babylonian Empire, not Babylon, but how Babylon and Babylon? No, it's not Babylon. It's the Sassanids and the Romans, the Eastern Roman Empire. It's Babylon. I'm a bit. I stepped quite late. So basically, look at that, because what you notice is that monotheism is actually, it's a very, very smart way of building empire. So the Eastern Roman Empire, they used to support kingdoms that were Christian. So they supported the Aksum kingdom which is next to Yemen, opposite Yemen. And the Sassanids, which were Persians, they were Zoroastrians, not Jews. They used to support the Jewish kingdoms because they were not Christian. Right. So a lot of how this history develops and how monotheism develops came partly out of the Council of Nicaea in Christendom, when the empire wanted to, you know, kind of have one specific belief system, but the East was more like, actually Jesus is both human and man, while the West was like, he's divine purely. And that split led to how Islam developed. And these things are very known in like academic history now, but obviously Muslims, we don't really learn about this kind of stuff. So if you're actually interested in that, really study the history of monotheism. Do it without that lens of what is my sheikh saying. Do it and like really look into what about it made it so successful, right? It's a very, very powerful empire building tool. And it's part of the reason that Islam did so well in terms of growing and controlling a large empire, right? So it's a very powerful tool, monotheism.
So just that point you said, that a very interesting point, that the West was more like Jesus is divine, East was more like no, he's a man.
Well, the East was more like he's both a man and divine, and then there was also people who said he was more like a man. So it kind of you know, one thing that comes out is people often say, how could Muhammad, in the nomad in the desert, have known about you know, Jewish traditions, Christian traditions,
when he's surrounded by polytheists?
When he's surrounded by polytheists. Well, no, Yathrib had Jewish tribes in it. In fact, in Yemen today, there was what's called the Himyarite Empire, which is a Jewish kingdom. So the king there was called Dhu Nuwas, which means the king of the Lord of the curls, because he had the curls for the Jew, like the Jews. So there were Jews in Arabia. There were Christians in Arabia. There were actually one of the Khadija's, I think, cousin was actually the person that first recognized
Waraq ibn Nawfal.
Waraq, yeah. So I think he was like
a Christian. He was a Christian
preacher, right? Priest. Yeah. So the point is, these theological and monotheistic traditions were in Arabia at the time. Yeah. They were more monotheistic than Christianity because of the fact that they came from the East. So Islam developed in a big way monotheistically because of that, right?
That's very interesting.
Which I found is very interesting.
Very interesting. You know? I never knew.
Yeah. There's a big world out there. You know, you really like it. Really is interesting.
So that's your answer. And I've got a question here. Golden Age philosopher says, why do South Asian Muslims want to trace their roots to Arabia when they aren't? They're most closely related to the Persians than the Arabs.
That is true.
What do you have to say? And this opens up the whole colonialism stuff. So if you want to take that, and you can.
Yeah. So one of the problems I have is that we talk a lot about Western sort of white colonialism, and we do not talk about Islamic colonialism. And I asked Tariq Ramadan this question at SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies in London, which is a very
liberal, hippy-dippy,
it can be,
stuff,
but they have a really, really good research on a lot of things. And Tariq Ramadan was speaking for a society there called Decolonizing Education or Society or something like that, and the event was called Decolonizing the World Through Islam or something like that, right? And I just remember going, and it was packed. It was like, imagine like 1,000 people, right? And I asked Tariq this question, and he kind of knows me because he's known me even when I was Muslim to now. So
so what was the question?
The question was, okay, Tariq, you're talking about how Islam was used as a decolonizing force in Algeria and all these kind of things. How can you have a book that's in Arabic, and it's a language that's supposed to be the language of paradise, better than every other language, with followers who are mostly not Arabs, by the way, and even if they are Arabs, they're not that same type of Arab. And then you've got the Prophet who's an Arab, you've got the Sahaba who are mostly Arabs, you've got the Khilafah who are all Arabs, you've got the Umayyads who are Arabs, you've got this idea that Imam Mahdi will be an Arab, he'll be like a white Arab, right? You're telling me that this is a decolonizing force. Do you not see the problems with it? And Tariq Ramadan was a bit like, he was like, okay, we recognize the problems there, but we have to deal with them as Muslims. I'm like, that didn't answer my question.
That's not an answer.
That didn't answer my question.
That's not an answer.
Because you cannot get from the fact that the Quran is in Arabic, and not just in Arabic, specifically Arabic is seen as this language of paradise.
Right? And it's the best,
it's the best language,
the deepest language. It's like whatever.
Now imagine the British Empire, which they did. They used to say, English is the best. We bring infrastructure to your countries. Our heroes are the greatest heroes. Our philosophers are the greatest. There's no difference, right? The only difference is time. Like the Islamic Empire ended a lot earlier than the British Empire ended. That's it. But I mean, it's a colonizing force. And so for me, the Southeast Asian relationship with Arabic, I find it very problematic. And as an ex-Muslim, one thing I've been finding is I'm more now in touch with my
South Asian culture
than I used to be. Do you know what I mean? Because I grew up listening to nasheeds, I grew up listening to Arabic stuff. Do you know what I mean? I didn't grow up listening to Qawwali, for example.
Oh, Qawwali's the best.
I love
Qawwali's the best.
I absolutely love Qawwali, right? So for me, it's been
there's a very obsession with anything that's Arab, and the Arabic language is the most beautiful, and it's even listening to it and saying most South Asians do not understand Arabic.
What was really funny?
They really don't.
No, they really don't. One of my friends, she's an Arab, and she's she's a perfect fluent Arabic speaker, can do lots of dialects as well. And she always laughs because she comes across these dawah people, right? And they'll say like kha, but they'll say it in a really like non-Arab way. They want to act like they're more Arab.
They'll overdo it.
Yeah, they'll overdo it. So like hadith, you know. She laughs. She laughs her ass off watching these videos with me.
No, but even when they speak in English, they're like, "How do you go over there?" It's like, why are you saying that for English? It's not even Arabic.
Yeah, exactly.
But Yeah, that's a great point. Let's just see if there's any more. Oh, hang on a second. Questions. Where did you study Islam from?
I mean, where does anyone study Islam from? I mean, people generally are born up in the religion they're raised up in, so you learn it from your family and peer.
Yeah.
Then you have books you can go to. Like I said, my first book was Imam Nawawi's Riyadh Salihin. But you study Islam through lots of sources, just like how do you study Jehovah's Witness
or anything really,
or anything, right?
Yeah.
You have different sources.
Are there any books you recommend?
Yeah, so I like Misquoting Muhammad by Jonathan A.C. Brown. He's a Muslim. His ethics are problematic, but his book is very good. There's Why I'm Not a Muslim by Ibn Warraq, one of the most researched books. It's so thick and it's very difficult to get through, but it's very well researched. And although he has a certain narrative, quite sort of angry narrative in it, for all the right reasons, it is if you can get through that, it's a very, very good book. It's very, very cohesive in terms of the argument. There's also if you're interested in slavery, read the History of Arab Islam in Africa. It's by a guy called a Ghanaian professor called John Alembila Azuma. It's a fantastic book because slavery is often something that both Muslims and ex-Muslims don't really know about very well within the Islamic context. So,
I've got a question here. This one. So, do you guys think it is possible? Think it's even possible to get rid of Islam but keep the original
what
cultures?
Do you think about that, actually? That's a very good question, isn't it? Like,
get rid of Islam. I don't think you'll completely get rid of Islam. Like the same way Europe hasn't got rid of Christianity. It's just sort of more in the background, and it's sort of part of it's part of the furniture, but it's not so loud and in your face. So for me, I don't want to get rid of Islam because firstly, I don't think it's possible, and secondly, I don't think it's necessarily even the desired objective, but it's sort of molding it and sort of updating it.
You want to create that space for narratives, right? You want to create like ex-Muslims, we're like over here, so we're like way off the spectrum of what it means to be Muslim. So by us existing, it means Muslims can slot into whatever position they might take. And right now, it's only you're either a perfect good Muslim with all the right theology, or you're a bad Muslim.
There's no in between.
There's no in between.
Yeah, there's no in between. And the same way Christians and Jews can have fun with their tradition and experiment and explore. And even if they're not religious, and even if they're atheist Christian or atheist Jews, they have that space where they can develop and they can tap into their tradition and really get the best out of it. I don't feel that space is there for Muslims. And it's a real shame because people like Imtiaz and myself and many other people would want still very much interested in Islam. I don't hate Muslim. I don't hate Islam. I don't have time for hating. But I want to learn about it and not be a Muslim. And not be attacked or anything like that. So there's this real potential that hasn't been realized. So that's what I would say for that. Hang on. So there was another question here, which was really a good question. Hang on, Shia. No, hang on. Okay, they're asking about books and stuff.
Are you guys like mostly do you like Eminem? Do you like Eminem?
What are your views on spirituality? Would you consider yourself a spiritual person?
What is spiritual? You have to always define it.
Can you define it for you? What is spiritual?
For me, being spiritual would mean, do I feel like I'm connected to
something transcendent?
Something transcendent from my body, I would say.
Right.
So, do I feel connected to the universe? Connected to other human beings? Yes. Is that spiritualism? I don't know. I tend to refer to myself as a humanist. So I say, for me, what's important is using my mind, using rationalism, using science and philosophy to help make my people and planet better. Right. So that's the best space I can put like my philosophy. But, you kind of draw your morality, even as a Muslim, you draw your morality for so many different sources. So if you're a Muslim and you're raised up in a specific environment and with specific friends, you'll have this kind of morality. But if you're from another, you'll have different, So I think we anyways draw morality from different sources.
That's a good point.
I would say I think people would look at me and think I'm very spiritual or I'm very not, right? Like it depends on who they are in many ways. So like I do think, there are things greater than me that I care about and I believe are important. But that doesn't mean I'm necessarily spiritual in a kind of woo way, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting because for me, spirituality, I'm the most spiritual when I listen to like Qawwali music or whatever it is.
Exactly.
But it's not necessarily transcendent. It's the fact that I don't know if you can rationally explain why Qawwali music has this effect on me, but I don't care.
Yeah.
That's probably the worst one. I don't care about when I'm listening.
Exactly.
When you listen to poetry or good music,
you're
or
not
whatever
assigning necessarily like specific rational arguments for why you do it,
but I enjoy
it, and you don't think it necessarily means like there's some,
that's probably the closest I'm gonna get. So I actually got some good questions. Something about Shia versus Sunnism. Which sect do you think has more potential for reform?
I mean, Shias already have a lot of concepts that would be considered reforming concepts because they've often been the minority. So whenever, like the Ahmadis, because they're the minority, they're often a bit more progressive.
They have to adapt.
But that's not to say that they don't have problems. Like ex-Shias that I know, sometimes they can grow up in very culty families. Do you know what I mean? So I think by definition, you've got 80 to 90% of the world is Sunni. So reform will have to come from Sunnism in many ways, just as much as Shias. But I think also the reform will be different for both of them. Like, Sunnis, their reform could be much more about the literal view of Islam, while Shias, their reform might be much more like
the whole Imam
stuff and how they relate to that, because they have different things they focus
on. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I would say Shias often don't even focus on Muhammad as much as they focus on Ali, right? So while Sunnis are obsessed with the Sahaba and Muhammad.
And the whole statehood thing.
Statehood. That's a big one as well. Yeah.
So we got a question. What do you think is the best argument for Islam? That's an interesting point. What would you say?
So if I put my dawah hat on, I would say, let me think. I would say...
Good question.
Let's argument for Islam. I mean, I don't agree with the arguments, otherwise I would be a Muslim. But I think one of the best arguments you can make is the structure that has provided societies for a long time successfully. Now, that becomes problematic because actually that's not true. Like, it wasn't really that successful necessarily. But you could say, look, we had a world that had these value systems. It worked for a while as an empire.
So the sort of historical
kind of thing,
but not necessarily theological arguments.
You could, no. The best argument you could make actually is like, look, the Quran has ideas in it that are quite positive. If we kind of ignore hadith to some extent and ignore and place within the time some of the things in the Quran that are a bit like dodgy, I think you could make a claim like, hey, actually, for me, a more progressive and reform Islam, although I don't necessarily think it's academically honest, because I think religion is whatever people make of it anyways, to some extent. I think a non-literalist Islam could be have quite a good case made for it towards an ex-Muslims anyways.
So do you think, how is there reliable evidence, historical evidence that Muhammad actually existed?
That's a very good question, and I'm not educated enough to answer that. Patricia Crone, Crone, did a lot of work before she died on this, and she was one of the key people pushing this idea that Muhammad might not have existed. So read her books and articles that are out there.
I heard a very interesting perspective from Tom Holland. Tom Holland. He was doing a sort of promotional book tour for his Under the Shadow of the Sword. And he's saying, which for me was like, wow, blew my mind. Obviously, I'm from a Muslim background, so I've got the Muslim version of events. His event was that Muhammad actually probably, if he did exist, probably existed around Palestine. This is where he got a lot of these Jewish Christian stories.
That's why they say that people used to pray to Jerusalem. I mean, that
obviously this as well. But for like around 170 to 200 years, there was no historical document of Muhammad. There's a massive gap.
There is.
And Muslims say, well, that's because of the oral traditions. Now, how do you
actually even the oral traditions? So I was reading a really interesting paper by a Muslim PhD in Hadith studies. And he was writing how it's very curious that the early books and collections on Hadith, like the Musnad of Imam, I can't remember. My brain's hurting.
That's all right.
The early Hadith books, their Hadith were, first of all, there's a lot more considered fabricated Hadiths, and the Hadiths were very like without context. So you'd give like, this happened, very little detail. And as you got through time, the hadiths become more and more detailed. And the reasoning behind that is because hadith have a power within the Islamic context. Because you say, my family, my tribe,
so narrated this,
you know what I mean? So for example, what's really interesting
is you embellish the whole
what's very, very interesting is that the people who are kind of pro Ali versus the people who are like pro, against Ali, they would say like Abu Talib, who was Ali's father.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Ali,
so.
yeah.
So Abu Talib never converted to Islam. So the hadith that were very nice about Abu Talib, like, you know, he was a great person, he really helped Muhammad, right? They're the people who supported Ali. While the hadith are like, yes, Abu Talib was nice, but he will be burned, his brain will be boiling in Jahannam. Those people were against Ali. So it's very interesting how hadith developed in that way.
Dan Gibson, are you familiar with? He argues that the original Kaaba was actually in Petra, Jordan.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I haven't heard that one, but that's interesting. Yeah. Who is Tom Holland? What are his credentials? Have you read Karen
Armstrong? Is I have to be honest, it's a terrible read.
Really, you didn't like it?
I really didn't like
it. What didn't you like about Karen Armstrong?
I just didn't. It just didn't seem to fit with what I was reading in academic paperwork. So Karen Armstrong, I wouldn't say she's not like a first stage researcher. She sort of takes what other people are doing and puts it together. And I heard her talk actually at a conference once as well. And I just remember listening to her and just going, you're whitewashing a lot of stuff that you know cannot be true. And I was sitting with a Muslim friend of mine who's very, very educated about this, and he also doesn't like her. He doesn't like Tom Holland either, but he thinks Tom Holland is not very grounded. I don't know much about the space, so I can't. But Karen, I felt like she was whitewashing quite a bit. I think they're a lot better. Like there's Robert Hoyland, he's very, very good. He's a very, very well-known academic. I would say he's very good, you know. Karen Armstrong didn't really, I don't know if you've read it.
I read her book. I read it as a Muslim, and I enjoyed it. It was more of a historical sort of.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fine. But
I think for Muslims, considering what you're raised up in, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
But I think when you seep yourself in kind of more like what's coming out of academics right now, it starts to look a bit dishonest.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, but that's my personal view. I'm not an expert.
It's completely fine. So, what do you think about Hamza Yusuf?
I like Hamza.
You like Hamza Yusuf?
I just read it. Even now, I really like him.
Can I say I like him, but there was a point where I went off him as a Muslim. There was a point I was like, you know what?
There's only so much you can kind of say.
I just got a bit annoyed because he was saying some stuff that was so unbelievably unscientific and irrational. I just thought, bruv, you don't have to, like, he's a very intelligent guy.
Yeah, he is,
And I felt like he's maybe playing this sort of Sufi role a bit too much, and I thought, I'm just not buying it anymore.
Someone asked the question, it says, Islam is a declaration of freedom for man from servitude to another man. I mean, what is a caliph?
Yeah,
caliph is, and
you have to give your allegiance to the caliph.
You have to give your bay'ah to the caliph.
Yeah.
Thus, it strives from beginning to abolish all the systems and governments which are based on the rule of man over man. I mean,
but then you have another rule of government, which is basically the caliph over.
And then you have various systems within there, like the slaving system within an Islamic state. It's still accepted. I mean, now you can argue that people have said it should not exist anymore, but for a long time, even after Muhammad's death, the saving system exists. That is literally the rule of man over man. You know, so I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, of course. Oh, I know. Sorry. Armstrong was an ex-nun as well. That's an interesting perspective. Do you think we can do the Quran the same as what Jordan Peterson did to the Bible, like exploring archetypes? Now, that is something which I've been discussing with Abdullah Samir. I don't know if you saw some of that or not. And what we're saying is that what he did with Christianity, I have been listening to so many of his lectures about Christianity, about the I think he's got this the Bible series where he talks about stories within the Bible, and he interprets them from a psychological perspective, from archetypal Jungian mythological perspective. And I found it absolutely amazing. I've really enjoyed it. So when I think, for me, the obvious thing is, well, why aren't we doing this with the Quran? Because all of the stories are pretty much the same, if not.
But it's been around for thousands of years, right? So or hundreds of years. So by definition, it will tap into this human, especially if you're of the opinion that the Quran was developed over time and not in Muhammad's time. So that. So
so do you think we need? And by the way, there are people like Jordan Peterson that have existed in the past, but they were either killed or exiled or silenced.
I mean, there's what's his name? In Abdullah Qasemi, who is this ex-Muslim. He was in Egypt in what's that Egyptian school? Azhar. He was an Azhari scholar, and then he left. He became an atheist. He wrote loads of books in Egypt.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So some people are translating his books, but he's an example of that. I think I don't know. I'm not too familiar with Jordan Peterson's work on the Bible, but I think it's very interesting, and people are too scared to do it right now. I think academics are too scared.
You know what? I think from what I can see, Muslims are looking over to this guy and saying he's made Christianity cool again.
Yeah.
He's made it sexy and cool to be a Christian.
We Muslims,
so now Muslims, all you guys doing dawah, forget that. Go down to archetypes. What do you think of
for mentioning wine rivers in the Quran? Was wine popular in Muhammad's time? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, this one here. So what do you think? What was the reason for mentioning the wine rivers in the Quran? Was wine so popular in Muhammad's time?
I mean, when wine was banned because of Abu Bakr's praying, there was wine flowing through the streets of Medina. So it shows you how much wine there was, wasn't it?
Oh wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, basically, this is an interesting one because the stories of Jannah, paradise,
it's very Arab.
It's very Arab and nomadic Arab. You know, like I love pomegranates, so fair enough. But I can buy them from Tesco's. Do you know what I mean? But like rivers of flowing honey, like I like honey, but not that much.
Yeah, I don't want to swim in it.
You don't swim in it, you know. So like it makes sense in that context, but
and this is where you got to extract the meaning from it as opposed to this literalism thing, which actually I think undermines. And just on this point, I'd like to ask you, this whole literalism sort of way of interpreting the Quran. One argument is that Muslim says, "Oh, it's so deep, it's so beautiful Arabic." Great, okay. Other argument is, "No, we got to interpret it literally." Well, then what happened to the deepness? What happened to the depth and the breadth of the Arabic language if you're just going to read the surface level?
It's really interesting because they say it's poetry and it's beautiful poetry. Well, do you know by definition poetry is generally not literal?
Yes, and it's very subjective.
It's very subjective, and I love that they try to do like Hamza Yusuf does that a lot. Like try to say like the Quran is not subjective or the subjective. It's literally beautiful. And
how could that mean? How do you get objective beauty?
And then they give you like this long list of like poetic systems. It's like, yes, we have
rhetorical device.
Oh my god! And it's like, you know, even as a Muslim, I was like, this is very suspicious because like there's no, you know, like language by definition is subjective.
Yes.
I mean, so I think someone earlier on was asking you to take your clothes off.
Me? Oh, okay. Well, if you paid me some money, that's for the after show. That's for the after show. Okay, I'm not going to answer that. Sharia democracy. I think maybe just about democracy. Just about.
Yeah.
Imtiaz, okay, here we are. You seem to be very familiar with the academic research into Islam and Islamic history. Any particular researchers you recommend? Thinking along the lines of
Robert Hoyland. I love Robert Hoyland. He's very good. I saw him speak once. Hoyland. Patricia Crone. She's controversial, but for good reasons. She's very good. There's quite a few actually. There's what was that name? Hayes or something. I mean, I can write some on your if I give you some book names.
Yeah. I can put some in the description.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. How much will you?
How much? Well, how much do you think my body's worth? How much? Okay, but there's another question up here somewhere. What do you think? So, what do you think? Okay, let's read this out. So, what do you think
It's a crisis of materialism.
Yeah. Do you read it? Or
if so, don't you think religion or metaphysical values are important to counter this materialism, which leads to evil?
So just to frame that, we get a lot of arguments that if you leave religion, and there is some truth in this, if you leave religion, there's a lot of nihilism, a lot of materialism, and there isn't anything maybe beyond your own skin that's worth examining or worth committing to. There's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as good morals because, well, there's no God to judge. So if I kill someone, well, what's the big deal, right? So what would you say to the people who say, oh, well, if you're an atheist, where do you get your morals from? Where do you get your meaning from?
Why are you not drinking your dad's semen?
Why are you not drinking your dad's semen? I haven't got around to that yet. Yeah. So what would you say to that?
I mean, the first thing I say is, have you ever sat down in a group of uncles or aunties that are backbiting about each other?
Oh my
gosh. So the point is, religious people, it's not like they suddenly magically have this non-material view, right? That's not true at all.
It's not true.
That said, I do understand the point that religion can teach you about things that are greater than yourself. And I think that is important. I think that actually in the world today, you can live in a city like London and feel very isolated, and human relationships are very important. There are things to counter that. There's community groups you can be part of. I mean, for example, I would say I'm a humanist, so I engage a lot with sort of humanists and stuff like that. I'm with Faith to Faithless. We're actually working very hard to have like a day out to the zoo or something like that, where you can kind of meet other people like that, build those relationships, because they are important. In terms of like how you get your values from, I think humanism for me works. but it also doesn't really mean, it's like a catch-all for kind of applying philosophy and stuff to the betterment of humankind. But I find it so much healthier than religious morality, because religious morality, especially Islamic literalist morality, is very dangerous. Because sure, you know, you can say it means I'm grounded, but what are you grounded in?
Right.
I'm very okay and comfortable saying I hate slavery and I will fight against slavery. It's a lot harder for a Muslim to do that if their book sanctions it, if their prophet had slaves, if Umar al-Khattab had slaves, that kind of stuff, right? So I find my choice of morality and the fact that morality is subjective to a point, it's healthier for me because I can make sort of better decisions.
Yeah. I've got a good question here. Why do you think Muslims don't like speaking up against ISIS and Muslim extremists? Now, of course, I would say that a lot of them do, but there is a strain within maybe Salafi or Wahhabi. So, for example, a lot of these guys who do a lot of preaching, although fine, they're not ISIS, but maybe they're not as open in their criticism of maybe like Al-Qaeda, Taliban, these kind of guys.
I think.
Do you think? Sorry, do you think it's because when Tommy Robinson says, well, it says in this hadith about stoning, about about throwing someone off a roof, they're not lying.
Yeah.
So they would have to address the same text that they technically believe in, and then their argument is, well, in an Islamic state where the caliph does X, or this is what. So they have to sort of. It's an uncomfortable truth.
It's an uncomfortable truth, and I completely agree with that. I think in terms of like dealing with extremists and ISIS, you know, especially in the West, Muslims have been taught, and it's not necessarily from themselves always. So we're taught a victim narrative. We're taught from a lot of Islamists will be like, we are the victims here, and you know, obviously there are problems, and there's definitely a lot of anti-Muslim hate and stuff like that, but it's kind of a way to stop us asking the big questions about these uncomfortable truths. And I think that's why it looks like they're not anti-extremist, but the reality is it's just that there's a mechanism to kind of not discuss these difficult questions which lead to things like extremism and ISIS. It is changing as well, though. I think a lot of Muslims kind of know extremism is bad, and they're having a discussion about it. So it is changing, I think.
We've just got a contribution from Janice Ritchie for £20. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, both. You're doing so much. You're a breath of fresh air. After watching the Muslim savage type tactics from the Speaker's Corner, we know who they are, with dismay, their approach only creates repulsion and division. I completely agree with that, Janice. Thank you so much for your contribution. That means so much to helping this space that we're sort of in, which is in its infancy. So we don't know how great our impact can be if we just maybe for the next.
Well, you'll find out because you'll get emails from people saying they watched your video and they thought you know what you said really helped them.
And I'm sure with yourself,
I get it all the time.
Yeah, you
like
get it all the time.
Like even now, I just got an email. You know, like all the time. Like it's
so thank you very much. I really appreciate that. How much can you go for? Because I know you're tired. I
can keep going. No, I can keep going.
If you need to stop, we can sort of say like, you know, 10 15 minutes.
I'm Bengali, man. We can talk for miles.
Here we go. Question: Imtiaz, as a half Pakistani, half Bangladeshi person, have you ever faced racial abuse from Pakistanis for your Bengali background?
So, just to clarify that, it's more that my mother's side of the family grew up in Pakistan. They grew up in Islamabad. And they grew up speaking Urdu, and they speak to Urdu each other. It's to do with the way my family is structured. I can't go into it too much, but basically that's why I have more of that heritage. It's not so much genetic, I think. But in terms of abuse from Pakistanis, no, especially not in Britain. I think in Britain, like they just live away from each other, and it's not really something we talk about. But I have come across more recently, when you talk about what happened in Bangladesh, Pakistanis can get very, very what's the word? You know,
defensive.
When you and you know when you like sort of hide genocide, where you just act like it doesn't exist. Denial.
Yes.
So there is a bit of that.
There is a lot of that.
Quite a lot of that, actually. Yeah, there's a lot.
We don't like to talk about that kind of stuff.
No, we don't. And
we don't like to talk about that stuff.
And it's often construed. It's construed as this kind of India helped you. You know, you wanted to break apart the Islamic State, all that kind of stuff.
It's funny because this raises a good point on racism within the Muslim community, and also, for example, there's the Turkish genocide of Armenians
and
Pakistani Bengalis. but we don't like talking about that kind of stuff. We don't. If it's like Iraq war, oh my god. If it's 3 million Bengalis or 3 million. Oh well, these things happen in partition.
And Palestine. This is why, like, the thing.
Don't get me started on Palestine. Don't get me started on Palestine.
I just speak to some of these. I mean, I was involved when I was at uni, lightly on that kind of stuff, and I do think actually I regret some of that, because it was like I was doing it partly because I felt people were feeding me that it's an injustice, which it absolutely is. But why was I involved in
disproportionately?
Disproportionately. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll talk
this is gonna open.
I'll talk to Pakistanis who are like talking about Palestine. I'm like, first of all, you've never met a Palestinian in your whole life, right? You've never met a Palestinian in your life. You are Pakistani. Yeah. You know what's happening in Kashmir. So if you wanted to have some relation, you could talk about Kashmir, for example.
They don't know about Kashmir.
Exactly. Exactly. And it does bother me a little bit now, more than it used to.
Yeah, I agree with you. We've got a few questions there. So someone asked, what do you think of the Chechen Mujahideen? I don't know too much about the Chechen Mujahideen.
Oh man, I remember back in the days when, like, in the mosques, they'd be like doing khutbahs, like crying, like, we're thinking about our people in brothers and sisters in it. And then and some of the people from the congregations, like, left to fight there as well.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So but I don't know much about it.
I don't know much.
It was from my childhood. I don't know much.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that either. Sorry, I couldn't really give much more of an answer. But I had a question here. No, we get the questions in a lot now. I don't know if it's later in the day so people are free.
Yeah.
What do you think of Pakistan war crimes in Bangladesh, Imtiaz? I think we touched on that just now. It's bad.
It's bad. Kind of
bad.
Talk about it.
Not
Let's
desirable.
Try not raping people. That's probably a good start.
Probably a good start.
You know what I mean?
I would agree with that. So I went to hang on. There was some questions here with people going crazy. India, Pakistanis travel to murder Bengalis.
Well, they were flown across India, actually, I think, or they were flown in planes, the army, to actually.
Can we speak about racism within the Muslim community?
Oh yeah.
Because it's all Muslim brothers are one brother and we're all one family until the black guy wants to marry your daughter, and then now it's like, well, we're Pakistani. How can we marry someone who's black?
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, you preach one brotherhood, one body, one ummah. But in reality, it's a very different. It's very different. The amount of racism is unbelievable.
And, like, what's really frustrating for me actually is I've seen so many times, like, black voices get shut down when they bring racism up.
Yeah.
So there was a video, but in a very, very, like, conservative One Path network, of a black Muslim guy talking about the problems. And the comments, some of them were ridiculous. They were like, Bilal. They always bring up Bilal as, like, the first token black guy.
One black guy.
Yeah, so the one black guy who was freed as a slave, who did the adhan, like, suddenly that makes racism okay. And that makes, it's just
I agree
ridiculous.
With you. And this whole thing about South, because I've got another South Asian with me here today. South Asian obsession with Arab culture and this whole Palestine stuff, right? I find that Palestine has become like a emotional punching bag.
Yeah.
For Muslims, whenever there's and I'm not saying what Israel doing is right.
Yeah.
But is the disproportionate amount of attention on that?
It's whipped up frenzy.
It is. It is. It really is. That's not to deny what's happening there, but I think it's disproportionate completely. I actually had. Don't you think Prophet Muhammad taught a lot of great things? Don't you think Islam was revolutionary?
I have a lot to say about that. So, what people often say is revolutionary was, for example, the treatment of slaves, right?
Yeah.
I did 40 minutes worth of videos on I have a channel called Salsala, which we deal much more about taking academic stuff and trying to, around Islam. And I did 40 minutes on slavery on that. Because it's actually, I have to be honest, a lot of what people say about the rights Muhammad brought as being innovative, as being new, is a lie. There's no way to bullshit around it. Okay. So, for example, rights to slaves. Well, 2,000 years before Muhammad, I can point to specific tablets from the Sumerian kings, like there's the cuneiform tablets from they're on my channel. Yeah. But basically, they talked about certain slave rights. So, for example, there was Ursagab, who was a slave in Sumerian 2,005 years before Muhammad. He was given freedom, and his children were given freedom as well. So clearly, there was these concepts way before Islam, and Islam developed in this environment because Sumeria was obviously the cradle of civilization. So I think a lot of the stuff that we say that Muhammad brought this right, that right, actually, it's not a new thing. Right. It was like, for example, women's rights, right?
Not bringing daughters or whatever.
Well, I mean, Khadija was double his age. She asked him to marry her. He was her employee.
She wasn't Muslim, was she?
She was not Muslim. She inherited her fortune from her father. She became a trader. So the boss, the pagan boss, or like not necessarily pagan, but the non-Muslim boss of a man who's half her age, asked him to marry her.
That wouldn't happen in Pakistan today.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah.
Or Bangladesh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, so to say that the Jahiliyyah times, like the times before Islam,
so much worse.
they were so bad. Well, how did Khadija exist then? You know what I mean? Hind was so she was like a non-Muslim who was like very anti-Muslim until she converted out of force. She was so she had so much freedom of movement. She went onto the battlefield and ate Hamza's heart or liver or something. Do you know what I mean? She had so to say that they didn't have those, it doesn't make sense even within an Islamic context.
That's true. She never thought about that. Yeah. So I've got a question here. Don't you think a change in society in Saudi Arabia can inspire Muslims around the world to reform?
What do you
Islam?
think?
I think they are unfortunately the heartbeat of the Muslim world. So the blood that's pumped from there gets trickled to the rest of the Muslim world. The same way they spread their Salafi ideology, we feel it here. So if they were to make some change, even if it's small, over some amount of time, I think it would be a net positive. Although their pace of change is incredibly slow.
Do you know what is a bit of an argument I've started using actually to Muslims? Muslims understand boycotting Israeli products, right? Yes. They understand because they say Israel does these things to Muslims in Palestine. Okay, cool. Saudi Arabia, we accept, is bombing Yemenis. Right? Saudi Arabia,
we don't want to talk about that.
Saudi Arabia, we accept, has been a negative influence on Muslims. A lot of Muslims are very anti-Saudi, but you're going to pay them lots of money when you go on Hajj.
Boycott Hajj.
Right?
If you are such,
if you actually care,
principled. If you're principled,
right? like if you believe Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest harms towards Muslims in the world, why are you paying them billions and billions in travel fees, right? Because that's how they make a lot of money. They make billions out of it. Right?
Oh,
billions. Have you seen? I mean, I haven't gone to Mecca for a long time, but like they've got like Big Ben Tower type.
The
Makkah Tower. Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, earlier we were talking about materialism.
Yeah,
it's ironic that the center of Islam
is the most materialistic
place on the planet.
On the planet,
it's disgusting.
It's true. I mean, there are Sufi temples and shrines which are a lot less materialistic.
Yes.
I've seen and I've been to compared to Mecca and Medina.
It's become the Vegas, hasn't it?
It's completely become Vegas.
There was another question here about some sort of rock. Oh no, is it gone? Veedu. Hang on, what's this one? Can you and your friend please state why you both felt Islam is not true and why you became ex-Muslims? Well, we kind of touched on that before.
Yeah.
So for me,
sort of loop back to the video a little bit. Yeah. What about?
So, but for me in general, like yourself, I was someone who was very pro-science. So for me, in my early days, if there was any contradiction between Islam and science, I would interpret that verse metaphorically. You know, you've heard it before.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily bad. And even I've actually read some commentary on the Quran that is like that. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm not alone. And they were very well-respected people who were commentators of the Quran. The one miracle I couldn't get my head around was the virgin birth. And I think that's a very
interesting.
How do you get around that one? For all the other ones I could find something. For this one I couldn't.
The virgin birth of Jesus.
Of Jesus. How do you metaphorically interpret that?
So let me put my Muslim hat
on.
Go for it. So I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does everything and anything is possible as he wants. So why is it not impossible? Why is it not?
No, my argument was not God is not possible. My argument was that if God created this world, he's going to be consistent. He's not going to one day say gravity is down and is
Brother, how can you see the mind of God?
Okay, so
there's the seen and the unseen.
Okay, I agree with you.
And the muhkamat.
I would say to you, and this is what I would say: if you can open that door, then why isn't the Trinity possible?
Yeah, you're right.
if Muslims want to play this game and say, God can do anything, maybe we can understand it, but hey, God's intelligence and wisdom is so infinite that we can't comprehend his actions, right? We're trying to rationalize it, but we're limited. Okay, well, 3 into 1 into 3 doesn't go.
To be honest,
you can make anything
arguments
possible.
That a lot of Muslims make about Christianity and the Trinity,
you can put them on Islam.
It doesn't really make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
If you believe God can do anything and therefore it's possible for him to have a son, well, I mean,
well, why not?
And it's not like even within Islam there are not other beings that have powers. So for example, Shaitan is seen as having certain powers as well. So it's not like it's all either the divine, which is only Allah, and
Yeah,
still,
I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, when okay, that's that question. Okay, but is a why don't Muslims of subcontinent show the same kind of feelings and protest exile of Kashmiri pundits from their homeland as they do with Palestinian Muslims? I think we touched on this before, and because of this very Arabian, pro-Arabian influence within the subcontinent, that we look towards Mecca and Medina and not to our own community and say what's going on here.
Exactly.
And I think it's been a very
very
if I told you, man, there are 1 billion whatever Muslims, 90% of them don't speak Arabic, but they're reading a book in Arabic every day and they love it, and then when they listen, they cry when they listen to it. Well, these guys are crazy. But this is the reality. It's the reality, you know. It's mad. I really think it is mad. How do you think Islam originated then? We touched on this before, but basically there are many different theories and I don't know which one is true or not true. But
I think no one does, and we probably will never really know,
because the records aren't that great, and the history sort of, it's not like it's documented every single. It's not like Muhammad wrote his own biography saying this is how I came up with the ideas. And even the
biographies that were written hundreds and hundreds of years later.
Yes, hundreds of years later, and a lot of them. I remember Tom Holland saying that in one of the series, the guy said, "I've actually left a lot of stuff out because it doesn't sound good."
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
That's an open admission.
I can believe that.
That's an open admission. So I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. They can't boycott Hajj, bro. Yeah, they can't, because for them it's more important that they get the Jannah than they have actually a principled stance on the cancer, which is Saudi Arabia on Islam. Will a reformation occur in the next 50 years? Now, I want to talk about reformation in general and the time scale. And I would say, and just to couch the question, I would say to Muslims, listen, if you think a theocracy works, look what happened in Christian Europe. They were killing each other for hundreds of years, just trying to figure out whose side is God on. End of the day, they both realize, you know what? Let's separate this thing. Church and state, let's separate.
I will take it one step further. I would be like, Muslims love secularism because they're in this country.
Yes.
Right? You can go in Speaker's Corner and talk about...
and say whatever you want.
You know, unless you're like saying we should kill X people, right? You can believe your belief, and you can have it. Like, Muslims love that, and yet they're, they want a theocracy. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. So back to the question. This space is very interesting. That's developing. 10 years, 20 years, 30, 50 years. In our lifetime, what do you think we will see?
I think is already happening. I think I'm of the optimist camp, but that's just generally with a lot of things. I think that by the fact that ex-Muslims are now becoming normalized slowly, we have stretched the conversation so far that it's forcing Muslims to realize there's more than just good practicing Muslim and bad Muslim, right? Because ex-Muslims didn't even exist. So you had good practicing Muslim, bad Muslims, and everyone is like, the bad Muslims should try to be good Muslims. Now that ex-Muslims exist,
we've lowered the bar.
Yeah, we've lowered the bar all the way down. Because even the bad Muslims can be like, well, I ain't an ex-Muslim.
We've taken the bullet for you guys that aren't praying. So now you actually look good compared to us.
Yeah, exactly. And the point is that the Muslims can now find their spaces. I mean, they are already. I do see more of that. I actually, funnily enough, talk to probably as many Muslims as I talk to ex-Muslims.
Wow.
Just because, like, they're just around me, right? And they contact me and stuff. And I think really Muslims are finding spaces for themselves because they have to. It's just hard. It's impossible to have a gay friend and be literalist, right? For example, as a Muslim.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Do you think Saudi Arabia should invest money on building more number of educational institutions rather than mosques?
I mean, they have been. They've been funding madrasas all over the world. That's
the problem. They have been. Yeah, that's how their ideology has spread. What do you think? That was the reason Muhammad wanted to commit suicide multiple times.
I have never.
Is it because he knew he was fooling people? I have heard this in hadiths.
I've heard of hadith early on, not later.
I don't know if it's true, if it's false, because of the nature of hadiths. They're so unreliable.
I think the concept was that he thought he was going crazy or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know about that.
They're very interesting debates about whether Muhammad had a certain type of epilepsy, because in today's time we can kind of measure and study those people, and they do often see God, and they get revelation, and so I've heard things like that, but how can we ever really know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Someone said, "Are you both in your late 20s or early 30s?" Wisdom comes with age.
I'm mid
20s.
I'm getting to my 30s.
But you're not that much older than me. Like maybe a year or two. You're not that much older.
I mean, people say that. Go on YouTube, search for XMNA. They're an ex-Muslim group in North America, and look for Life Beyond Faith. There's a guy who's 70-year-old Pakistani guy. He's been ex-Muslim for 70 years. He's like, I think 80, 90 years old. He's 70 years old, and he's been ex-Muslim for most of his life, 50 years.
Oh, wow.
So I think you need to check that. And actually, I know a lot of ex-Muslims who are very old. Wow. It's just that obviously you can understand why they don't come out and stuff like that. Yeah.
Amazing. Forget about the reform question. When can we expect a Muslim country to go secular in which one can think? There is talk about Tunisia,
Sudan, and
Egypt and Sudan.
No, I think it'll be very difficult because a lot of these countries still have that base of
pro-Islamist or pro-Muslim.
And a lot of this is because the Islamists used to work with the poor. They're very smart about that.
Yes.
They work with
Muslim Brotherhood with Egypt.
They can really do that in Egypt. So I don't know. And there's other people who are much better at answering that question than myself.
It's an interesting space because you have the secular dictatorship or
that's the problem. And their relationship to secularism has been so tainted by the dictators. It makes it very difficult for that sort of to come back.
You know when you were talking about earlier about that Muslims love secular countries, as in when they're in them. They love it. But I ask people who are pro caliphate. You know, there's those guys who say, oh, I don't want Saudi Arabia caliphate, but I do agree with the idea of
the idea utopian caliphate, right?
So I always ask them, what are you not getting in this country that you would get in a secular in a caliphate? You can pray, you can fast, you can grow a beard, you can all the Islamic things that you would normally do.
Brother, I'm surrounded by all these kuffar.
Then don't leave your house. Or move to East London.
Move to Luton.
Move to Luton. There are Sharia zones now, unfortunately, that you can move to.
By the way, that's not really.
I know. It's not true.
I'm just saying it because I know some
people are like, oh, really? Okay. No, there are no Sharia zones in the UK.
There's some crazy people who sometimes walk around.
Yes. A 17-year-old ex-Muslim atheist is closer to the truth than a 70-year-old old Muslim who mindlessly recites the Quran every day.
I think it's about thinking about it, isn't it? Yeah.
By the way, how good do you want to end at 5 or do you want to keep going? It's up to you.
I don't care.
It's because I know it's taking you're answering so many questions
I've got the whole day, so I'm sure.
Okay.
I can't really imagine his voice without Zakir Naik.
Blinking before my eyes. But that was a really good question.
It's a bit like Elvis, Zakir Naik. You got this. Zakir Naik talks like Elvis.
Yeah. Such a great conversation, guys. Glad it's happening with you two. Top blokes, keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Jackson. I really appreciate that.
Although it's interesting, we've kept this going for a long time, and actually we've had way more people joining in.
Yes, more people are joining in.
Maybe it's because of time.
I think it was time. I got this question. I don't know if you want to answer
I really
this.
like him. Yeah, Reason on Faith.
Did you answer this question?
With all the glorious work that Imtiaz does for the community, is he able to maintain some sort of day job? Perhaps consulting work he can demand. If he had to do it again, what might he do differently in terms of balancing activism with earning a living? So that's a very interesting question because
how would you
it's really affected my work. And it's not just me. If you speak to like Mohammed Saeed from XMNA,
right?
He does he's in sort of tech, and he's lost money because he spent so much of his time doing the stuff that he's doing with ex-Muslims. With me, I mean, my stuff is around business, technology, startups, and like it's difficult because it's a very unrewarding. You have to keep hitting at it for a while. The other thing is because my income from that is quite unstable. It's only recently that I'm having even like a normal salary. So it's been kind of problematic because obviously I can't put any funds to ex-Muslim stuff. There's no money in this area, no matter what the Illuminati tell you. So it's very difficult. In terms of what I would do differently about balancing activism, I think a lot of people don't give themselves space and time when they get into it. They go really into it. They're frustrated by how many people are being injured and hurt. And I think they don't create space for themselves. I learned how to do that luckily quite quickly. I have some friends who are well-known activists in their own right in different areas, and they kind of warned me about that. So I've learned to do that. But I think that's important. I think the other thing is also I've stopped hiding my name from my business name. Like it's Imtiaz Shams in both. And that's because, interestingly, if you care about something that's more than materialism, even it helps you even with work in business. I find, because people, it's a conversation starter. I found people who want to volunteer for my charity, who then I end up doing business with, because there's a respect that we have for each other. There's a credence, right? Like there's a guy who's talking to me about my charity, really, really nice guy. He's very successful in business, and we were just talking, and I just like that he cares about things beyond business. And so now we're looking at doing business together. So I find surprisingly it's actually added to my life rather than taken away.
That's amazing.
But that's probably not the case for every ex-Muslim, because obviously ex-Muslims are very
there is a huge cost that's associated with this kind of stuff. So there was a question here, this one. Do you think that if Islam is properly reformed, hypothetically speaking, of course, it can be a force for good, especially as there are many positive teachings with it? Listen, I say that any major religion that reforms itself, that adheres to reason or rationality, that gets closer and closer to that, is good. I'm not one of those people that say we need to eradicate Islam from the no. We don't do that.
If you look at if I actually give you real examples, so I've had progressive reformist Muslims help ex-Muslims before. So I've had marriages where they needed their ex-Muslim, but they have to be secret about it, and only a few types of Muslims will do and sanction that marriage. They've helped. I've had cases where, for example, the Quakers, which are kind of seen as very, very like reformist Christians, they've helped ex-Muslims when they've been homeless. So I think like reform religious people, as long as you're not literalist, there's a lot of space to do good. I would even go as far as saying quite socially conservative Muslims, if you understand the value of freedom of speech and the value of my right to speak, you can become an ally. I know it sounds a bit counterproductive to a lot of people, but I think that they can be just as much an ally.
Absolutely. Right? What is your opinion on Baha'ism, a reformed and peaceful version of Islam?
I don't know much about it, I have to be honest.
I don't know much about it other than the fact that I believe they're persecuted in Iran.
I mean, basically, anyone that's not is a bit more chill tend to be because they're persecuted, like the Ahmadis. They're a bit more chill because they're persecuted.
So, someone said about no freedom of speech in the Quran. Let's talk about freedom of speech in general for Muslims. There's this idea that you cannot offend Islam, you cannot offend Muslims, you can't insult my prophet, as if it's like some sort of like physical law. Like I don't know, I can't break the laws of gravity. I can't insult a prophet. Where do you think this sort of deep attachment to the prophet or this offense comes from?
It's cult-like, isn't it? It's like a cult.
It is almost like that,
right? Which is funny because Islam is a faith. So this cult-like view of Muhammad, I think, is very dangerous. And I think if we look at where a lot of this blasphemy stuff came from, though, I think a lot of it came from the funding of madrasas in Pakistan and Afghanistan and Bangladesh, right, by often Gulf countries and investors in the Gulf, and people doing zakat, because the best type of zakat is not helping the poor, it's spreading Islam. It's dawah. So actually, when people say, "Oh, Muslims give a lot of charity," it's like I want to separate the charity that helps the poor versus the charities that's spreading your religion. So that type of zakat that's gone into madrasas, where you've got kids just reading Islamic books, and they are poor. They have nothing else. They have only one source of income. Of course, they're going to be angry, and of course, they're going to be whipped up into a frenzy and burning things down and murdering people. I think that's very dangerous. So it's almost. The problem isn't purely religious. It's very much about, it's fed by religious extremism, but it's not just religious. It's a lot about funding, I think.
So we've got an interesting question up here. I believe, the question's gone crazy.
There's a lot of questions.
I actually highlighted it. Oh, they took it away.
Let's retract it.
Okay, retracted it. Okay. What do you think about the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights? Does this explicitly show the incompatibility of equality with Islamic treatment and non-Muslims? I'm not familiar with the Cairo.
I'm not, actually. I think I've read it once, but I'm not familiar with it enough to answer that question.
People need to be more aware the Quran is not the direct word of God. Ex-Muslims, please spread this.
I love that. If you're a Muslim and you believe that, you're on the right track to not being a bad person, because as soon as you believe the Quran is the direct word of God, it becomes a problem. That's a fundamental for me. Okay. When you don't believe in that, there's a lot more space to be.
Much more maneuver, isn't it?
There's a lot more space to maneuver.
So, hey guys, interesting discussion. Is there no objective morality, and is it something in our mind? Then how could we use such immoral aspects of Islam to disprove it? That's a very good question, actually. What do you think about that?
Something in our mind, then how can we use such immoral aspects of Islam to disprove
it? So if there's no objective morality, how can I say something in Islam is wrong? So there must be
no, because that almost doesn't make sense to me, because if there's no objective morality and everything is subjective, I can discuss Islamic morality and go, that's wrong because it's subjective.
And if it's objective, then I can measure it against.
I can measure it against, yeah, if it's
something objective.
Yeah, well, for example, if they're saying slavery within the right framework is ethical, then I can be like, I don't believe that because X, Y, Z, and I'm saying that their view is not objective. Does that make sense? Now, my view of morality being subjective doesn't make it weaker. Right. I think it actually makes it stronger, because what you're saying is, we don't know. You have a humble approach to morality. We've messed up so much in our world and our history, right? So we know human beings are just
are flawed, and their organization of society and their values have been flawed, which is why we've approved in so much.
It's quite interesting, because Muslims will say humans are flawed, but Muhammadan God is not flawed, and Islam is not flawed. But all we're doing is applying that fact that we think that Islam is not from God to it. So okay, if it's not from God, then it must be flawed, because it's from human beings,
exactly,
and must be subjective.
Question: love as an ex-Muslim. How do the ex-Muslims you both know deal with relationships? So
very difficult.
So I'm guessing, just to put it to you, do you know of any, like, for example, ex-Muslims who are still in a relationship, like married?
Yep.
How does that?
I stayed over at one of their houses once. It works fine because the wife is not a literalist.
Right.
In other cases, it's very, very problematic, and it changes. I mean, it's very interesting, because if the woman is not the Muslim and the man is the Muslim, what I've seen often is that there's much more controlling behavior, right? While if it's the other way around, where the woman is Muslim and the man is ex-Muslim, often what happens is the moment there's an immediate divorce, right? So it's very interesting how that happens. So and that's actually what's accepted. The problem is that if you're an atheist, your Islamic marriage is annulled immediately. That's a big problem. So so that I've seen that happen. Often there's lots of negotiation, and then one party also becomes ex-Muslim or becomes a very liberal Muslim or questioning Muslim. I've seen that happen quite a lot, and that's because love is, I think, often more powerful
than the theology or whatever.
And that's even with families, like even relationships and families. Like I have seen the most Salafi families, which are like, the woman wears the niqab, the man is, very, very Salafi, where the child has either left Islam or come out as kind of gay, and even then they accept them. It's because love is quite a powerful thing. People don't realize how powerful it is. So yeah,
fair enough. Is it fear of hell the sole reason which drives Muslims killing other Muslims and claiming that they are following true Islam?
Can't be, because human beings are not led by any one thing anyways, right?
I think it's too complex
to say anything. I love like reading sociology, because sociology basically teaches you there's no single variable in anything, but there are key variables, and one of them will be Islam, but it's not the only one, and the fear of hell is part of it, but it's not the only one.
This is an interesting question. Do any of you still keep some practices from Islam? For example, I don't eat pork, haven't tried alcohol, and still living the halal type life. That's an interesting question. I haven't changed that much, to be honest with you. I'm still the same kind of guy. I asked my parents, if I hadn't have told you I had doubts, or
you could have,
they would never have known. So
is
the same experience with you?
Yeah, it's very similar to me. So I'm actually known as the person who doesn't really drink.
Mashallah.
I mean, I do drink sometimes now, but I even now, like I was at the ex-Muslim event in the Midlands, I just drank tap water, and people were like,
what's wrong with you?
Because new people are like, they expect me to drink. So I don't, in terms of like what I eat, I'm much more open with that now. Like it doesn't bother me. But like, I do actually. I actually go to khutbahs sometimes.
Really?
Sermons. Yeah. I just like.
Wow. Why is that?
I just like knowing what they're saying. To be honest, I just want to know what.
Is it a sense of familiarity as well?
Yeah. I was at East London Mosque recently, and I grew up going to East London Mosque. Like I used to stay there overnight, like with the kids.
Oh, really?
With the youth. They had the youth groups. So like, it's a sense of familiarity. It's what I grew up with. This is why I sometimes use the word cultural Muslim in a very specific context for me, because I didn't really grow up with a culture. I grew up with Islamic culture. Specifically, and that's the specific thing of this generation. So I listen to I've got like most of my music is either Qawwali or Islamic music actually.
I love Qawwali. I love
like
Qawwali.
Hamza Yusuf.
He's a good guy. I like him. I had a question here, saying something about hang on, let's just go a bit. Oh, I have a question for you. When you go to the mosque, has anyone recognized you?
Yeah.
And what was the conversation?
I
What
mean,
were you doing there?
no.
Or was it like, oh, brother?
They'll say, I recognize you. You know what I mean? They'll be like, I recognize you. And because most people are not dickheads, you know what I mean? They're nice people, most people. And they recognize me and they kind of see me and I don't look that different from like a normal Muslim, you know what I mean? So, and then they were just talking to me and I said, and they were like, yeah, why are you here? And I was like, oh, I just like coming to see. And they were like, oh, that's very good. May Allah guide you to the right path.
Fair enough.
Cool, fair enough.
So, how long are you good to go? Keep going.
I can keep going.
Okay, cool.
This is fun though.
There's
a lot of questions.
There's a lot of questions. Thanks for engaging with us, guys. I really appreciate this. Imam Tawhidi lately is saying that Aisha was married and had a child before getting married with Muhammad. I think he invented this up as a reason for dumping hadiths. I've never heard of this before. But what do you think of Imam Tawhidi? He's very interesting. I'm not really sure what to make of him, to be honest with you. Some of the stuff he comes out with is very... I don't know.
I think it's probably a case where his presence is important.
Yeah.
But I think he's a bit crazy.
I do think there's something a bit...
I've just dealt with so many of these activists. I just don't like any of them. I like some of them, but I only like them if I feel like they're not batshit insane.
Right.
I think, unfortunately, some of the dawah people remind me a lot of some of these people. So I stay away from them.
Fair enough.
I don't know him personally, so I can't.
Yeah, of course. Do you think we should have more number of debates about different religions to know them better?
Yeah, I think we need more discussion.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. And I think we're not... Unfortunately, a lot of the religious debates are controlled by the religious people. So they'll be like Christians versus Muslims.
But in a very rigid framework about proving one or the other.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah. What do you think of Arif Ahmed?
I actually did an event.
I think it was
he's very intelligent. He's very fiercely intelligent.
He's brainy.
He's
got a brain on him.
Fiercely intelligent. It was so funny.
Very articulate.
What was so funny is that when he was doing I think the event with us or something happened. He was telling me the story. His mum was online like defending him as he got Pakistani.
Oh, right.
He's like defending him. So he's fiercely intelligent. And I think he's one of the people in our generation who we'll see more of. And
I'm surprised there's not much more videos about him because he seems very quiet.
He's very busy in Cambridge. Like he's very busy.
I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he is.
But I mean, he's someone that I think a lot of people need to know about. He's Sam Harris.
I don't know what to make of him sometimes. Actually, like every time I've heard him speak, I've been like, yeah, that's so good. That's great. But then I've heard a few things like when it comes to politics where I'm like, I don't really agree with that.
His politics, I would not agree with that much, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But his sort of atheism or
exactly.
theology, I'm much more inclined to
It's like Richard Dawkins. Like whenever Richard Dawkins talks about anything about evolution or even atheism, I agree with a lot of it. When it comes to like women's rights, I get a bit like,
I think for what they're known, like his neuroscience is
exactly
great. But other than that, I don't really
listen to him.
No, he's not someone who I sort of follow that much. Question: Imtiaz, if Allah asked why you rejected Islam, how would you?
I'll ask him a question back. I'll be like, listen, Allah.
Yeah.
Listen, Allah. I have worked with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Why have you fucked their lives up so badly? Why have you given cancer to little children who had no reason for that? You've given them, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So pretty. Do you agree with the?
I've thought about it.
You were very prepared for that answer. Do you agree with the way how Majid Nawaz's attempt to reform Islam, e.g., challenge into debate, and So what do you basically ask about Majid Nawaz's reformation?
I know Majid quite well, and I've talked to him at length about this stuff.
Yeah.
I think that his view on reformation is built on probably some quite accurate hypotheses. Do I think it will work? I don't know.
Right.
That said, I have been seeing since he started doing that radio show LBC. Actually, a lot of Muslims have started to actually like take his side. I think when you're in a think tank, I was speaking to him about this yesterday. Actually, when you're in a think tank, you're with activists. When you're on the media, you're really making a difference directly because you're reaching out directly to people. So I've seen a lot of Muslims. I
agree with you. People that I was actually back in the days anti-Majid.
Yeah.
And when I sort of realized, actually, you know what, he's not that bad. I think he's been painted as this person who's a informant, sellout, whatever.
Exactly,
but then I realized actually, if I just listen to his actual opinions, what he's saying is not bad. But then I came across someone who's anti-Majid, and then over time he has slowly moved, and he's someone who's really very religious.
Really interesting.
Very religious.
He's become more sort of.
He's become
I mean,
more
the thing
accepting.
with Majid, like people don't realize sometimes, they forget, is how steeped in Islamic theology and debate he was, because he was going to run his with the hate for a while.
He was someone who put his life on the line for it. He wasn't someone who just some Tom, Dick, and Harry just got.
He was in Egypt. He's Egyptian jail,
He's put his life on. He's put his beliefs on the line.
Exactly.
Do you think Muslim or non-Muslim comes down to faith? What you choose to believe. Islam in essence is for the 5 pillars. Is there anything wrong basically believing in five pillars?
I'll give you an example of that. Is what we were talking about earlier, zakat. Now zakat is one of the zakat is one of the 5 pillars, right? If zakat is one of the 5 pillars, and a concept around zakat is the most important form of giving is for proselytizing and dawah and doing more preaching, I think that's actually dangerous. I think that's a problem, and I think that's why we see in many ways the world is the way it is today, because people are giving zakat to madrasas and they're teaching children, from a very young age to have these views. So I think even the 5 pillars can be dangerous. Like Hajj is one of the 5 pillars. Well, where is all that money going to? Makkah, right?
It's not like that's allocated equally.
Exactly. Salah, for example, Salah, which is seen as this kind of, it's a ritualistic part of the 5 pillars. Well, there are hadith about how if your child after the age of puberty is not praying, you can beat that child in order to.
I never heard of that.
Or this fiqh at least. Yeah. You can beat that child to make them pray. So I mean, yes, there's 5 pillars, but what that means is important as well. You can't just say it's just a 5 pillars standing on its own, right?
Yeah. Where do you see Islam in 100 years?
What do you think?
I think it's a very interesting space, and I think we are going to be. I honestly think there will be a civil war, an intellectual civil war, if it's not already happening within Islam, where you'll have sort of ex-Muslim moderates, liberals on one side, people basically for secular values, and want to retain the Islamic heritage, and those maybe the more hardliners, the Salaf, even some of the Sufis in South Asia are pretty hardliners. If I'm honest with you, Salafis and these extremist guys who want to hold on and they're not going to budge. I think it's going to cause a massive debate. And then you have people who are the more secular side just saying, you know what, guys, I'm not interested in even associating with you anymore. And it will tear the religion in two. I think that's what's going to happen.
I agree. And actually, I would go one step further and say I think it's going to happen a lot quicker than people think.
I'll
tell you why.
Okay.
Because if you look at how LGBT gay rights in this country changed, they went from people actually hunting gay people on the streets.
That's true.
From now, like it's totally accepted within the space of about 50 years.
It's not a lot of time.
It's not a lot of time. 30 years, 50 years, So I think change can happen quite quickly when it happens. So,
what do you think of the opinions
on the heated debate on triple talaq in India?
So for people who don't know, this is where a man can say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you to his wife, and that apparently counts as a divorce.
While the woman has to take him to court.
So it's much harder for the woman to do that.
I think it's an absolute... I've dealt with people who've had to deal with this. It's an absolute... it's an absolute farce. The fact that for a woman to divorce their husband, they have to take it to Islamic court, where obviously the Islamic court will be like, oh, well, what did you do wrong? Or blah, blah, blah. Or they'll try to keep them together, while the husband can literally just say, and that's it. It's ridiculous. Anyone that's been through divorce knows how hard it is. And that a man can just say that 3 times. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's nonsense.
What do you think of Western naked women?
What do you think of Western women dressing semi-naked? You've got a lot of experience in that demonstration.
I mean, it's really funny because that kind of thinking, right, is why people like Dawah Man
are alive.
Went to the streets. I think maybe it was in Romford, actually. I started chatting to these 15, 16-year-old girls.
I saw that. That was terrible.
15, 16-year-old girls basically telling them, if you get raped, the reason you get raped is because you're dressed like this with a crop top. That is disgusting. And I think the fact that we're so obsessed with how women are dressed one way or the other. So we say they're wearing hijab, that's a bad thing, take it off. Or we're saying you should wear this. The point is, it's about choice, right? You can say certain things are oppressive. So you can argue that the hijab is oppressive, and the niqab is oppressive, or you can even argue that heels are oppressive if you want to. But the point is, there's no space for that.
Imtiaz, have you been approached to come back to Islam?
All the time. All the time.
Have you been close though? Have you been close to sort of maybe?
No, because no one I've actually talked to. So the people who are intelligent, who actually know their Islam quite well, they generally find it very uncomfortable to talk to me, and they respect my decision. right?
Oh, right.
Because they realize that I'm not stupid. I've really spent time thinking about this. I'm still obsessed with Islam. Like I spent so much of my life reading about Islam. While the people who are trying to get me back because they think they'll score brownie points, right? They realize very, very quickly that even what they know about Islam is nothing, and what they know about the rest of the world is even little, right? So if you talk to them about how does artificial intelligence work, they'll have no idea, right? I know very little about it, but because I work in that space, I can talk about it. You know, if you ask them about Islamic history, they'll know about only the Islamic history that they've learned from their dude in the mosque. They won't even know about the range of views within Islamic traditional Islamic culture.
Okay, welcome. How do you feel about children 7 to 8?
Yeah.
Covered in hijab sometimes.
Really
I don't like that.
I really don't like that. It makes me so uncomfortable because you're sexualizing.
Someone said I think it's child abuse. Do you think it's child abuse?
Child abuse is a very strong word.
Not necessarily, because I
think
it could be part of a cultural norm.
It can be abusive.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go as far as calling it child abuse yet.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Okay. On that. But it's certainly not good.
I find it very disturbs me, to be honest.
Imtiaz, scariest moment as an ex-Muslim activist? Scariest moment?
I've had a few, actually. I'm trying to think. Well, I've had 2 death threats last year. And one of them was like, you got to work for that.
I haven't earned any death threats. It's just been, if I see you on road, bro, I'll knock you out. I'm that's not really death threat. It's not death threat. It's not death threat.
Kid from school.
Probably some 15-year-old hasn't dropped his balls yet. Go
on. Scariest moment. I mean, there was I almost got found out when I was in the closet as an ex-Muslim, when I was helping a lot of people, but some people in my vicinity almost found out. That was very scary. But like there's nothing that, like, I'm not very scared of death, so it kind of doesn't bother me too much.
You're scared of death. That's interesting.
Yeah, what scares me is more like if someone's gonna harm people like I care about.
I love both your response on Sam Harris. I find that atheists, including some ex-Muslims, follow him like a saint or a prophet of atheism. And even though I'm an atheist, I get flaked.
I mean, people are people, right? Like, and ideas are ideas, and we need to be able to treat no one like they're a saint.
I did not leave, and I'm sure the same with you, leave Islam and sort of reject the ideal of a perfect man just to accept another perfect man. So the whole point of we left Islam is because we didn't think that there's such thing as perfection within one man. So we're not going to now say Richard Dawkins is the most perfect.
I see that with like Jordan Peterson sometimes. Actually, his followers sometimes are a little bit culty.
I think they are. But I accept he's got very, very good, interesting points, but he's not a perfect human being. So whatever. And he says himself he's not. So that's fine. Veedu, are you Muslim? Have you not been watching for the last 2 hours 16 minutes? No, I'm from a Muslim background. I would say I became ex-Muslim, agnostic Muslim, whatever you want to call it, around 2-3 years ago. But I still love Muslims. I still love my family, my friends, and
you can probably see some of the like furniture.
You can't see it, but there's a lot of Islamic art, whatever. I don't know if you can see it in my house.
You've got the Pakistani cushion.
Yeah, exactly. So but I've got no problem with Muslims. Imtiaz, as a child, did you rock back and forth at the mosque learning Quran and did not actually go home
any wiser?
Most
Muslims grow up going to madrasa. I don't know if that's true, but I went to madrasa like my whole life. Yeah. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So we used to like,
I actually went to Muslim school for 3 years.
Did you?
I went to Yusuf Islam's one.
I know people who went to that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay, we can talk about that later.
We can talk about it later. There's only so much I can say on camera. Yeah.
But so I went to that school for 3 years, but we didn't do any of this, that kind of stuff. Why don't you move to countries like Japan, South Korea, Luxembourg, etc., where there are no Muslims? Well, there's also no connection. I've got no family.
Also, that's not true. I know for a fact there are Muslim Japanese people.
Of course.
And South Koreans. And in Luxembourg, I worked there for 3 months. There are definitely Muslims there. Trust me.
I don't think the solution is to simply move away from them.
And also, I like my community.
Of course. I've got so many friends and family, and uncles and aunts and whatever. I'm not going to move away from them just because I disagree with them theologically. Imtiaz, how was your North America tour?
It was really good, actually. We had a really funny situation in Georgia Tech where we were talking about it was a very controversial title called "Defending Muslims Fighting Allah," kind of thing, to make the distinction between people and ideas. And we were talking about slavery, something we talked about earlier in this video. And a woman stood up and started sort of shouting at us, and she's African American, and she was talking about how slavery in Islam is the kind of the good kind of slavery.
What?
Yeah. And another girl at the back who's African American, ex-Muslim, started shouting. They were like shouting at each other, and I was like, look, I was saying here, look, the good thing is, we were saying the good thing is we can sleep at night knowing we're anti-slavery.
Yeah.
Right. And you are not. And
there's no exception.
There's no exception. There should be no exception about slavery. No. There's no kind of good slavery. There's no kind of
good slavery. It's like saying there's good rape and there's bad rape.
Yeah. Well, people say that though, don't they? They say like marital rape doesn't exist.
Oh yeah. This is terrible. It's just disgusting. Have you ever?
Oh, I have a big story about that. Have you ever cried in the mosque for dua and prayers?
Have you?
I mean, yes, but I'll tell you another story. You know, when people talk about spiritual experiences, but I connected to Allah because of this and that. Well, I understand that because I used to go, because I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I used to go to Umrah a lot, and I remember once when we went there, it was on Laylatul Qadr. You know, the holiest couple of set of days.
In Ramadan,
and you get like, it's like a combo multiplier, like you get your blessings times 1,000 kind of thing, and I remember that they were doing they used to do the prayer for rain, right? Which I don't know if you know, there's a prayer for rain.
I don't know the prayer, but I've heard of
the rain prayer. And so it was Laylatul Qadr. They were praying for rain, and it started raining.
Allah,
and everyone was like crying and raining, and it was great. I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
He finally listened.
Yeah. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But the point is, like, I get
the movie scene.
I get that kind of spiritual. I get that spiritual experience, right? Like, I get that. I felt that before.
You should have offered something else. Rain, money, or something.
PlayStation.
The PlayStation. Xbox, that's really good. I've never actually been close to crying in a Muslim. What's his question? What was his question?
I told that story yesterday as well. I remember you on Reddit. Right.
Have you seen men with dark marks on their forehead? Sign of religiousness. What do you think?
I think kind of sad. Honestly. I've always been confused about that.
I've seen the marks,
but like, I don't get how they do it, because if you pray a lot, it's basically bruising from praying, right? That's the idea. But I don't understand, because the mats are quite soft.
I'm guessing it's just a lot of prayers, and even the ankles go black. Have you seen that?
Oh no, I've not seen that.
The ankles become like they get calluses because they're standing up for so long. I feel kind of bad because they're devoting themselves to something that's not real. But if they want to do it, then it's up to them. Vidz, why is it pretty hard to find more people who are comfortable of making jokes on their religion, especially Islam, whereas the more orthodox opinions get the most attention? Well, I think you kind of answered the question yourself, is that the more religious you get, unfortunately, you get more defensive and more protective over what you can make fun of and what you can't make fun of. And a lot of these guys say you cannot make fun of anything within Islam. It's not simply Prophet or God. It's like nothing within Islam. The Quran, the Hadith, the Sahaba,
nothing.
Any ideas you can't, and it's such a depressing outlook. It is so depressing.
It's very interesting because a lot of Muslims will talk about how Islam came and reformed tribalism. But actually, that's a form of tribalism, because you're saying my in-group needs to be protected.
You just increase the in-group.
Yeah,
you just accumulated more in-group, but it's a more what do you want to call it? Vicious in-group mentality. So that's what I would say. Something about birth rates. There's the Muslim birth rates, not only in the UK but in the world, is the most high. And I mean, that opens up a huge conversation. What do you think of that?
I think we have lots of babies. I mean, it's changing though. I think like in the UK, if you think about how many families that immigrated here that had like 6 kids and now they have 3.
That's true.
Like I have 2 brothers. Like most people I know have only 2 or 3 siblings.
I was speaking to my father about this, because he was telling me that his mother is a sibling of 10.
Yeah, same with mine.
And he has only 1 brother. So he's 2, and then I've got 2 other siblings, so 3. So within one generation, it's gone from 10 to 2 to 3.
That's very normal. Like when you get wealth and education, you end up having fewer kids. I think it's going to change a lot as you get kind of education and
absolutely. Hang on. Like your Valentine's video. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Vidz, do you have a taste for Eastern philosophy, like Taoist, Buddhist, and Jain's, Hindu? Honestly, I haven't done a lot of research or any, I've got to be honest, in this area, but I would absolutely love to. I heard the story of Buddha from Jordan Peterson, where his dad created a town or a city, a walled city for Buddha, because where everyone was rich and wealthy and happy, because he didn't want him to see any oppression or any suffering.
And then he walked out.
But when the moment he walked out and he saw a poor man and a hungry man, he was like, "Whoa, man, this is crazy!" And I think there's so much wealth of knowledge and wisdom within those traditions, and I would love to explore that. If you can recommend any books or any lectures or any people, put it in the comment section, and I'll definitely check it out, because I would love to sort of learn from that. And by the way, speaking of Buddha, well, I went to Pakistan a few years ago. And I went to, they had this one of the oldest civilizations, the Indus
civilization,
river civilization, which is in Pakistan. I went there and I saw massive sculptures of Buddha. In a Greek fashion. So there were Greek people there because they were known for their sculptures, and the Buddha went past Pakistan or part of Pakistan. So they were making sculptures of Buddha in a Greek manner. And I thought that's amazing. That's amazing.
It just shows you how much of our history is actually linked together.
Absolutely.
We try to create these kind of ideas that divide, but actually there's been a lot of trade and culture.
Shintoism as well. Okay, fair enough. Yes or no? Islam, as it is right now, is a religion of peace? That's a very good question. As it is right now, I think it's too diverse, and it means so many things. It means
it'd be impossible to say that.
It almost means nothing. It almost means nothing, because
it's like, yes or no, does frogs taste like chicken? Like, it's like,
it depends.
It really depends, and that's an easier question to answer.
I would agree with you. But what I would say, to take that question seriously, is that the scholarship or the center of Islam certainly is not for peace, and that is Saudi, the Wahhabi, that sort of strain of Islam. I do not think is peaceful.
Someone made a very interesting comment saying, "Veedu, please ask your questions in Zakir Naik's manner."
Okay, so okay, let me see a good question. Okay, I can do in a Zakir Naik. Brother, the time space has asked the question. Veedu, what do you think of women walking around in Wales? Mashallah, if women, brother, if our sisters are walking around, burqa, it's a very good thing. We should encourage it. Why do I want to see their face? That's my answer.
You can't do that because I can't breathe.
You can't, okay. The brother here, it has a very hard time breathing, so I'm going to stop thinking. I can't do this thing. Okay. Have you studied slavery in Roman times?
They could. Yep.
They could buy their freedom. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And they could become citizens, not full citizens, but secondary. Yeah, their children could become citizens.
That's interesting. What do you think of the Buddhists in Burma? That's here by Yusuf.
Interesting. I went to the big questions thing that I was on. There was a conversation with the Rohingya, and there was a Buddhist monk and a guy who I spoke to afterwards who grew up Buddhist. He's an ex-Buddhist essentially, and he made a very interesting point about the Orientalism towards Buddhism, where it's this idea that Buddhism is this peaceful, loving thing, but actually how it's practiced and the philosophies can become violent as well, or they can become problematic. And I think that's very interesting, and it relates a lot to Islam and Muslims, because we get Orientalized as well, that it is either the religion of peace or it's the worst thing in the world. And it's like, well, no, people practice
much more complex
than that. Yeah.
Please go to Speaker's Corner as Zakir Naik.
Oh, that'd be so great. You should.
A lot of people have said that to me, and I might do it. I might need some security, because I don't know.
Can you say what you just said in a Zakir Naik?
The brother asked a very good question. He said, "Why don't you go to Speaker's Corner? In London, Hyde Park. Why don't you go there as Zakir Naik, as yourself? Be true to yourself, brother. Let me tell you, I am not afraid to go anywhere in the world, whether it's Speaker's Corner or the corner shop. I will go anywhere to spread the message of Islam." Oh, that's the question. There you go. What do you have to say about the golden age of Islam? Appropriation of Greeks, Chinese, Hindus, Persians. It was golden. Why can't Saudi You know what? Let me just say something. That's a very good point you made there. I think one of the most important factors, or the things that made the Islamic Empire great, or whatever, was the fact that they were open. They took from the Greeks, they took from the East, they took from the West, they took from the Romans, and there was not this, well, they're kafir, so now I'm gonna discriminate against their knowledge. Well, they're not Muslim, so I'm not gonna take their history seriously. They took everything, and they and people from all around the world, the Greeks, the Indians, the Chinese, came and learned because there was open approach to knowledge and thinking. I think now we've completely.
And I think what's interesting is
gone away from that.
If you actually look at who did that, that caliph would be considered a heretic today.
A lot of these guys would actually.
It was the one who did the Minhad, the Inquisition. It was his name is Ma'mun, Ma'mun II. And so the Bayt al-Hikmas, which is the House of Knowledge, they are actually translation spaces, because they would translate Persian works. So I think like the Golden Age, it's very important for us to discuss it because it happened, but it doesn't lend any credibility to Islamic arguments. Actually, it does the opposite, because it shows that Islam,
took from other people.
We took from other people. We had
which is fine,
and we also had our own scholars, but they were all heretics. Like they got half of them got murdered.
It's so strange, because you hear a lot of these people talk about Salahuddin, or for example in Pakistan you have like a Jinnah or Iqbal, and we glorify them. But these guys drank alcohol, they were heretics, secularists, these bodies. I mean, a lot of these guys that we love and idolize in their time were either imprisoned or they were like a minority opinion. Jinnah was already Shia. How many of these Sunnis? Jinnah, he's a Shia. So
exactly.
Make of that what you want. Not that I've got anything against Shias. Actually, I don't have anything against Shias. What do you think of the Islamic sunnah of shaving anal hair? Okay, hang on a second, son.
What?
I've never heard this anal stuff. I've heard of the armpits, armpits and pubic hair, but anal, I've never heard this, brother. I don't know what you do with your Gillette, but I will not share blades with you. That's what I'm gonna say. I'll share needles with you, probably. Okay. By the way, for time wise, how?
Cool. If I'm enjoying this, to be honest.
You're enjoying this? I'm enjoying this as well.
I'm actually very surprised that we've kept the numbers of viewers. And it's actually grown.
Well, it's you. It's not me. It's you, man. I'm telling you. I saw. Hang on. This is about yourself. Hang on. I saw Imtiaz Shams in a BBC debate. I was surprised when I saw him there. I recognized him immediately without knowing his name. Nice speech there. Very good. That's from. I'm guessing this was the
big questions. I think
big questions. But how's your response been on the big questions afterwards, or like when you speak to the people on the panel?
I mean, it was good, because you know what often happens with big questions is that someone who's kind of promoting the kind of atheist or non-Muslim view will be white, and I think people. It's a very easy distinction to say, oh yeah, but that's because they're white, right? I am right. This is not white, right? So, for example, when that woman who was who was on the student society, and when I was talking to her, well, like she's from Somali heritage, I believe. I'm from Bangladeshi heritage. There's very little racial differences. No. You cannot go into that argument.
There's no superior.
So then it ends up becoming about ideas, right? And I think that worked quite well. I've had a lot of Muslims actually say they really liked it. If you look on the comments on the video, actually a lot of them have said they support kind of what I was saying. So I think it's good, and I think we need more people like us kind of out there.
I also like your approach on that, because afterwards and at the end you said, okay, well, can you help us as well? And she almost
because they
malfunction.
They just expect me to shout at them.
There's a bit of brain malfunction.
It's like, well, no, you are. If you actually care about human rights, that's what you're saying. Let's work together. I always say that to people. I say, okay, you're talking about human rights of Muslims. Let's work together. You care about human rights.
I agree.
But half the time they don't.
Which sect represents real Islam? I honestly don't agree with this idea of real Islam. There are more Islams. There are some versions of Islam that stick more to the tradition than others. But real Islam, again, I don't know. I really don't know, because you can justify it any way you want. Adnan Rashid, have you met him?
I feel like I have. I don't know where though. I've met a lot of these kind of guys, but I don't remember where I've met him.
What's your view on adultery?
It's probably unethical, but you should probably not kill people for it or lash people.
That's a good start. That's a good start. I find it strange that some of these punishments are so final. There's no room for sort of.
It's like you're gonna leave marks. Have you ever seen a lash? I've seen a lashing.
Oh really?
It's really like people think lashing is like that. It's like actually you leave bloody marks in the back. So.
Don't you think certain interpretations are extremely dishonest? Yes, I do. But as someone who studies literature or, any text, you have to understand there is a room or some wiggle room, and you can be as subjective as you want. Some people say, well, look at the context, and then you can get hadiths that justify it, and you can do all abrogation. I mean, you can play this game all. You know what? Let me tell you something. We can have these theological discussions for the next 1,000 years, and they will still not go away. They won't go away
because it's a religion made by people, and by definition.
Yeah.
Imtiaz, are you straight? Yes, I am straight.
Right. Now that's interesting. Why would you think that he's?
No, I
really. Did you get?
It's because I did a video with my friend who's gay.
Sahil Ahmed.
No. It's Riaz. In Bangla, and ever since then you've been.
If you interview a gay guy, you're automatically gay. That's what I'm going to say. Because why else would you want to talk to a gay person? Do you think Zakir Naik believes in what he comes up with? What motivates him? Can you
explain in your accent what motivates you as Zakir Naik?
That's a very good question. AJ Krush. He said, do you think I believe what I actually say? What motivates me? Brother, let me tell you something now. I have so many gardens in Jannah ready for me. The amount of people I have converted to Islam, it is so much. It is too many people. So I am motivated by Allah's reward that I will get in the hereafter. Oh, that's the question. There you go. But anyway, do you actually? You gotta some of these preachers.
I don't think he believes in it anymore.
Really? No. What do you think he doesn't believe in?
I think he just cares about the money. I think it's a materialism thing. It's like if you look at Nigerian preachers.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
It's the same thing. And you get stuck in it because you can't then change your views.
Yeah.
Like Yasser Qadhi changing his views even a little bit has caused so many problems.
Big deal. Yeah. Fair enough. So almost they're trapped in it.
Yeah.
If Muhammad was alive, if Muhammad was still alive, do you believe he would be in charge of ISIS? This is a very good question. Do you think, genuinely speaking, if the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive today, do you think he would look at ISIS and say, these guys have destroyed my religion? Or would you say these guys are not doing a bad job?
I think it depends on what mythos of Muhammad you believe in.
Very good point.
Right. So some people would point to the fact that he was an empire builder in the way like the British Empire was grown. And in that sense, certain language in ISIS makes more sense. But then some people talk about him being a builder of sort of polity and community and empire. And there, you might argue that's not the case. But I mean, ISIS developed using Islamic concepts that even happened after Muhammad. So the concept of Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Kufr, like, the land of war, the land of Islam, the land of Kufr, and the land of like kind of in between, that came after Muhammad.
Yeah,
so in any case, I think we will never know. And like, I don't even know who Muhammad is anymore, to be honest, because I think like the more you look into it,
I agree.
The more we don't actually really know much about him.
I agree. Do you think you can hide your ex-Muslim status for a long time? I mean, some parents want you to get married and stuff. How have you found that when some people come to you and say, I want to get my parents are forcing me to get married or even encouraging me to get married, but I know I'm not really Muslim and I don't want to lie to my potential spouse?
If you asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have given a very different answer. Now, I actually believe coming out is better for you and your relationship to your family. The reason for that is because I found that there's a lot of, even if you kind of come out, and no one can stay in the closet fully. Like, you have to say something. You might take the hijab off. You might
shave your beard or
whatever it is, right? So what I find is there's always this concept of shame, right? Like, what are the other people going to say? And that's very intrinsic to especially like South Asian culture, right? Yeah, like what are the neighbors going to say?
Respect and all that stuff.
But if you're kind of quite fully out, you kind of lose that. So at the end, all you can have is a relationship based on love, because you cannot have that control mechanism anymore. Do you know what I mean? So I found it's actually beneficial to come out properly, because what it does is it forces your family to make a decision on you based on love. And most families cannot disconnect from you completely. It's impossible for most of them.
Fair enough.
So it's a controversial view though, and I'm trying to explore it more, but that's been my experience and the experience of other people I know who've told family and spoken in public and stuff like that.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I still cannot believe the Tariq Ramadan story. I mean, who would have thought?
Is that like about the?
That's a very interesting. I don't know what to make of it.
I mean, I've been coming across more and more. I mean, there's a Muslim woman who posted something about how she's a lawyer, I think, and she was interviewing one of the victims, and she was like, "We need to deal with this because this is real." So, I mean, I believe in any case, even with people I don't like, evidence is very important.
100%.
We need to look at it through I hate the concept of social media trials.
No, that's terrible.
However, there's been enough out there now about Tariq that it's like, holy shit, this is big. Like, think about it. Like, one of the women wrote about him years ago in a book, right, without using his name about it. and she only came out later saying his name after the Me Too movement.
I don't know.
There's another woman as well who came out, and there's now another woman in America, I think, who's come to this lawyer lady. So I think there's enough coming out now that it's gonna. But at the same time, I'm very careful, like, not to be like, yeah, that's definitely happened, because
I don't know. You don't know. Fair enough. What do you think of Muslim fanatics building Islamic structures right on top of sacred places of non-Muslims? Hagia Sophia in Turkey, Dome of the Rock Mosque in Israel.
It works both ways, isn't it? There's been also like
I mean, there have many mosques that have been turned in, like for example in Spain, that mosque that was turned into a church. So it works both ways. I mean, many religions do this. They sort of we've conquered it, now we're gonna Islamicize it or Christianize it or whatever.
I think if we're talking about in the modern way, it's modern day, it's a different conversation. But for example, I mean, there's a church that we used to use nearby, actually, about a couple of miles away. We used to use it as our like Friday khutbahs and Eid things. And they were happy with it because they got money for it. So I don't have a problem with that, to be honest. I think it's always been the case that people take religious places and move them around.
Change it around, I'm a Bengali and my parents are like this like, okay, so I think you were talking about something you mentioned earlier. Religion is OCD for Muslims. Do you think that for Muslims it's a lot about control? Eat this way, drink this way, sleep this way.
For some Muslims, and I think the problem is literalism, because when you have literalism, you have that. But not for all of them, obviously. But
what are your views on Denmark's insults of the Prophet Muhammad?
I mean, Denmark as a country didn't.
I don't think it was a state policy to insult. But listen, I would say, if you really believe in Islam and you really believe in the Prophet, if I insult you or someone else insults you, you should not feel so defensive that you either have to retaliate with attack or silence me or whatever it is. If you are confident and comfortable within your religion, why do you feel so threatened? Right? If I draw a cartoon, if you don't like it, don't look at it. Simple as that.
There's a guy called Armin Navabi, who's the founder of Atheist Republic. Very, very smart guy. And he said something really funny. He was like, and he's got this kind of, he gets more high pitched as he's getting more like passionate. And he was like, if you want to draw a Dawkins, I don't care, draw him naked. You know, like
it's true.
It's true though. Like, like the point is, like, if you want to insult, you have the right to insult everything I say. No problem at all. Right? I think it's disgusting. I think I'll disagree with you, but do it. Draw me in a cartoon. I mean, don't, but you can. Like, you have the right to do it. I'm not going to kill you. So
I agree. Someone asked me, why do you always diss Zakir Naik and Hoblos and not better comedy material like Tahul Qadri, Braille VPs, especially in Pakistan? Because I would love to do Tahul Qadri. when he starts speaking like, or hum jayenge wapar, whatever, all that kind of stuff. I would love to, but my Urdu isn't as good as other people. And there are plenty of people within Pakistan making fun of Tahul Qadri and all those Braillevi guys. I would love to.
The Braillevi guys are really funny though.
The Braillevi, and they're like this. They're almost militant Sufis.
It's so funny.
They're so like sort of like
they're all big guys,
big gangsters, and all sort of big beards and kohol, and they dye their beards red and what. So they all look like cartoon characters. But those guys are, I don't want to be too general, but they're a bunch of clowns as well. And there are many people within Pakistan who are doing that much better job than I could do. But you make a very good point. Loving you guys. Greeting from France. Bonjour, bonjour.
It's crazy. Like we were at 898.
Yeah, this is the highest I've ever had, by the way. Really? It's crazy.
Armin is G. Yeah, he's really funny.
Yes. Okay. How are we doing for time?
Yeah, I'm cool.
You cool? If you want to...
Almost at 100.
Almost 100. I'm starving. And are you hungry?
I'm hungry. Do you want to get some food?
So we'll get some food. So let's say we'll give it another 5 to 10 minutes. Let's say at 50. At 5:50. So within... We're out. You've got 8 minutes. Get your questions in 8 minutes. And also, guys, if you enjoy watching the channel, please subscribe. Please share the channel. And if you can support me on Patreon, on Vidz, please do so. Do you have a Patreon account?
Well, we have like a faith to faithless Patreon.
Face-to-face Patreon. So also, if you like what Imtiaz is doing, he's doing a great job. Please support him as well. He's got his Piecemeal on YouTube channel and his face-to-faithless Patreon. Please check it out. I think we mentioned this earlier, that when you do invest a lot of time into ex-Muslim stuff, it does take a hit.
Massively
on your career. So what we're doing off our own backs. We're not getting paid by the Israelis or Zionists or anyone else or any even big institution or anything like that. We're doing off our own backs. So if you enjoy the work we do, please support us. We really appreciate that. So we've got 8 minutes left. Vidz, are Muslims more inclined towards Marxism? It's an interesting question. I don't know about Marxism, because Marxism is sort of I'm guessing anti-religion. But I have found that Muslims are
more far left
and more socialist. Which is very strange. I don't know why that is. Maybe their conception of zakat and charity, if it's taken to a state role, then it's more bigger government.
I was funnily enough, I was speaking to my friend about this yesterday with Marjorie.
Good question.
As well. And it is that. It's exactly that, because
it's like zakat.
Yeah, it's like the difference is that in a communist state, you'd say that the state could take care of everyone's needs, so everyone's equal.
Yeah.
In a fascist state, you'd say that except for the undesirables, the state should take care of everyone, and everyone's happy. And in an Islamic state, you say the state would take care of everyone through Islamic concepts, and everyone would be happy. So it's kind of this.
I think there is a link. I mean, the moment you put, for me, there's not a big difference between saying God will solve this or the government will solve this. It's kind of the same thing in a way. So yeah, I think there is a link between socialism and Islam, not necessarily Marxism. Hang on, so let's see some good questions. Hang on. So, Muslims allied with the Axis in World War II. Does fascism come from Islam? I don't know if it comes from Islam.
Yeah, I don't know if it comes, but you can see how theocracy and fascism can work together quite well, right?
Yeah,
like it makes sense. But then again, there's been a lot of secular dictators in the Middle East as well. So
you know, Veedu, I've heard that the Times newspaper has been lying about Muslims. Is this true? I don't know what
does that even mean.
The Times newspaper.
No, but what does that even mean? Like
lying about Muslims.
Okay,
that's a very general question. You have to be more specific. What do you think of the Israel-Palestine issue? I think we've been over this before, but obviously it's a very long stream. Yeah. So in general, I would say it's a disproportionate response to what does Palestine represent as a Muslim population? Not even 1%.
Yeah.
Yet the outrage that just generated by this topic, because it's Jews, it's Israel, it's Zionist.
It ticks all the boxes for this kind of how do we make people really angry about it?
I agree. That's not to say that there aren't problems there, but I think
it gets very problematic though when people get involved in a way. It's like with the thing with Rohingya Muslims, where I see people getting involved and they don't really care about the Rohingya. They don't even know what they speak. They don't know where they're from. They don't know their history. They just care that Muslims are dying, and that's what they care about.
And it's at the hands of someone else, non-Muslims.
Exactly.
Because when we're talking about Saudis and Yemenis,
no one gives a flying flip about the Saudis and Yemenis.
Don't hold back if you want to say. How can ex-Muslims deal with the depression and suicidal thoughts that come with leaving their religions, especially if they are closeted?
Yeah, so it's a very, very big problem. Depression, borderline personality, are generally PDs, like personality disorders. It's a big problem with ex-Muslims and Muslims. But we have a huge problem just generally within the Southeast Asian community, within Arab communities with mental health. The first thing I always say is find a place to let out the steam. So find other ex-Muslims you can speak to. Big places. Reddit are ex-Muslim. I'm a mod there. I love that place. But there's also lots of Reddit, Facebook groups as well. And
have you got your own face-to-face list, or your own group or network, or people can?
We are starting to build that for face-to-face list. But there's lots of ex-Muslim groups I've set up, but they're secret. So in Australia, they're secret. It's like Fight Club. You have to kind of know. If you go on Reddit and just Google the city you're in or something like that, and just contact me, I can direct you guys. But basically that really helps. So there was a kid in Saudi Arabia, transsexual, clearly is not going to be happy for a long time. It's very difficult in Saudi Arabia. What am I going to do? I'm not going to say you're going to be okay. But what I try to do is connect them with other Saudi atheists that I knew, or ex-Muslims who are transsexual, and it really helped them, right? And so I think the first thing is to find other people. I think really understanding mental health is a big one. Katie Morton on YouTube is my favorite person for understanding mental health. She has some fantastic videos. Watch all her videos over and over again. I've had to learn about my mental health and other people's mental health just through because I had to learn about it. And her videos are fantastic. So understanding the problem is the first solution to solving, depression and things like that. And then get therapy if you can. It's very difficult for people, but if you can get it, that'd be great.
So someone asked, why are there Sharia courts in the UK in the first place?
It's a very difficult question, actually, because if you believe in freedom of speech, Sharia courts have no legally binding. They're not legally binding in any way, shape, or form in the UK. However, they're binding in a community, right? So, and they create a lot of problems for women, especially, and ex-Muslims as well. So, it's a bit like if you sign a contract with me, it doesn't matter. Like the government is not going to get involved in that, right? However, there is arguments to be made about if something is institutionally promoting, promoting, creating problems for women and stuff like that, that you can shut them down or at least regulate them. But as soon as you regulate them, you treat them like they're a government thing. So it's very complicated. I don't really have an answer to Sharia courts in the UK because I know lots of people who are against it. I know lots of people who believe in the freedom of rights and being able to, and I don't know where I sit actually.
Fair enough.
Which is funny because a lot of people think I would be against them. I am, but in terms of state intervention, I'm not sure.
So they've got a question here. Why are ex-Muslims usually on the right?
They're mostly on the left.
The left. So I think so I would say that they're usually people who are left, but some of them do go to the right because the left has rejected them, or they don't speak for them, or they make it like we were saying before, native informants like Uncle Tom's and whatever sellouts. So they're like, okay, well if you guys aren't going to have us, we'll go to the right.
The right listens to us for all the wrong reasons. But I would say most ex-Muslims are actually center left. I would say.
Right. Fair enough. Why will ex-Muslims have suicidal thoughts? I think we mentioned that before. Okay, cool. Your audience must be getting hungry as well. The number of watchers is dropping. No, man. Yes, it is dropping. So, 1 minute left. 1 minute left, guys. I'm going to take this minute and say thank you very, very, very much to you guys, and thank you very much to Imtiaz. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, man. It's
been an absolute pleasure. I thought it would be like a 1 hour, 1.5 hour.
That was like
just under 3 hours, basically. Wow. 3 hours. So, guys, honestly, thank you so much for being here, Imtiaz. I want to thank you again because I think we've covered so much ground.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. I would love to have you back again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This time with food. We'll eat before.
What we'll do is we'll have food.
We'll have food here.
Biryani, absolutely. So you guys are jealous.
Absolutely. We'll be eating next time. So, guys, thank you once again. I really appreciate this conversation that we're having. This is a new and exciting time for Islam, for ex-Muslims, especially within the UK and the West. And for you guys to be witnessing this conversation is a big deal to us. And we've had pretty high people watching. I just
love, like, there's people from Korea, from Kosovo.
Let us know where you're from.
Melbourne, Australia. It's crazy. It's great.
So, guys, honestly, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the comments, all the questions, all the support. And we will be having. I'll be trying to do this every week. Every week we'll have a new guest, someone new on. It's not about debating. It's about having a real conversation, exchange of ideas. And I hope you guys have learned, and I've certainly learned a lot. So Canada, Japan, as well. Subscribe. Vancouver, Canada. Great.
Swindon,
bruv. Swindon, bruv. And on that note, Swindon, bruv, we're going to leave it there. Kosovo. Thank you so much, guys. Peace and love. Let's be bigotry with a smile. Thank you.